Chapter 1. It was raining heavily in the capital, and even the afternoon sun was obscured by dark clouds, as if someone had offended the heavens. In the Pei Manor's woodshed, Xuanhuan was curled up in the middle of a messy fire, her green robe mixed with the ash and weeds in the woodshed. The tightly locked wooden door was opened, revealing a rare sliver of light in the dark room. But the person on the floor didn't move at all. Pei Zio walked in, covering his nose in disgust at the damp and cold smell of the woodshed. He walked over to the figure on the floor and kicked her waist. This kick was truly painful and he didn't hold back at all. The tears on Xuanhuan's face hadn't dried yet, and all she could do was squint her eyes and stare fixedly at the man in luxurious robes. He was still as handsome and gentle as ever, but the mocking smile on his lips made her feel as if she were in an ice house. This was the man she'd once loved the most. Just a few days ago the two of them had been husband and wife. The man who'd once given her a sliver of light in the endless darkness had now pushed her into the abyss of darkness with his own hands. "It's been a few days since we last met, sister. How have you been?" Xuanhuan looked toward the source of the voice and saw a face she couldn't be more familiar with. Yiqianing. Xuanhuan would never have thought that the seemingly harmless Yiqianing would be with her husband. After all, she was her cousin. Pei Zio waved his hand, ordering a servant to pick Xuanhuan up. Her frail body was roughly pulled up, and she knelt in front of Pei Zio. Yiqianing walked over with a bowl of medicine. "Sister, today's the day the Yun and Lin families will be executed. Aren't you going to take a look?" Xuanhuan's gaze shifted and she raised her head, her tears still wet. What did you say? So you didn't know?" Yiqianing covered her mouth and laughed, then pretended to be angry as she shoved Pei Zio. "Zio, no matter what, I'm still a member of the Yun and Lin families. Why didn't you tell me?" Pei Zio smiled dotingly, his eyes filled with boundless gentleness, a love that Xuanhuan didn't even dare to imagine. But now she couldn't care less about her husband's betrayal. "Yiqianing, what did you just say? What happened to the Yun and Lin clans?" On the day that she had been locked in the woodshed, she had only known that the Yun family was in chaos. She had never imagined that it would be so serious that the entire family would be executed. Yiqianing raised her eyebrows and smiled shyly. "So sister still cares about the Yun and Lin families? Previously, when you broke off relations with the Lin family because of Zio, I thought you'd forgotten about them. His Majesty has already decreed that the traitorous Yun clan and Lin clan will be executed today at noon. How was it? Does big sister like little sister's gift to big sister?" "What?" Xuanhuan's gaze froze as she stared at the woman in front of her. Instantly she felt a chill in her heart. It wasn't that she hadn't wondered why the Yun family had fallen to such a state overnight, but she hadn't dared to link it to these two people. Xuanhuan gritted her teeth, her eyes red and tears began to flow. She glared at Yiqianing and roared, "Yiqianing, you're so vicious. The Yun family treats you like their own daughter, and I treat you like my own sister. Why would you do this?" Xuanhuan's voice was filled with tears of blood, but Yiqianing smiled charmingly. Her slender fingers twirled around a stray strand of hair by her temples as she spoke almost sympathetically. "Sister, so you really didn't see through it all. That's right, a vulgar and ugly person like elder sister would probably still be wholeheartedly focused on her husband. Sister, why didn't you think about it? Why would Zio be interested in an ugly girl like you? What madam of the Pei Manor? Zio wouldn't even bring you out with him, so you're not worthy." Ugly girl? Was that really the case? No wonder Pei Zio had never been willing to share a room with her. But she wasn't the kind of person who would force herself onto someone. If Pei Zio had said that he didn't love her, she wouldn't have married into the Pei Manor. But it was Pei Zio who had said that he didn't care about her appearance or the birthmark on her face. So it had all been a lie? In that case, was Pei Zio marrying her just because she was the wife-born daughter of the Yun family? Thinking of this, Xuanhuan felt as if she had finally seen through the man who had shared a bed with her for so many years. Regret swelled in her heart, but it was all too late. By her side, Yiqianing slowly opened the medicinal cup. The brownish-yellow liquid emitted a dangerous scent. Yiqianing smiled. "Sister, let me send you off on your last journey. Don't worry, I'll take care of the Yun family's business and your husband for you." Seeing the medicinal cup, Xuanhuan understood what was going on, and she turned to look at Pei Zio. But all she saw was a pair of cold eyes and a face full of indifference. "Yiqianing, why waste your breath on her? Just force the medicine down her throat." A cold voice rang out. Pei Zio looked away in disgust, not even willing to meet her gaze. "Pei Zio, I want to hear you tell me why you're doing this. Why are you treating me like this?" Xuanhuan shouted. Pei Zio laughed coldly and lifted Yun Ruoyan's chin, as if he were going to crush it in the next second. He said word by word, "Why? Because not only are you ugly, you're also a useless piece of trash." As he spoke, he threw Yun Ruoyan to the ground. Useless? This wasn't the first time she'd heard that word, but this was the first time she'd heard it from the person she loved most. Was that what Pei Zio was thinking too? That's right, she was born ugly and she couldn't even become a blade master. Xianxia didn't bother putting on an act anymore. She raised the medicinal cup and walked toward Yun Ruoyan. Perhaps it was her survival instinct, but Yun Ruoyan, who had already been tortured beyond recognition, suddenly exploded with strength and forcefully broke free from the servant's grip. Slap. The crisp sound was especially piercing. Xianxia clutched at her cheek in shock. Yun Ruoyan had hit her? The ugliest girl in the Li Kingdom had actually dared to hit her. What right did she have? The next second, Pei Zio rushed forward and slapped Yun Ruoyan hard across the face. Slut. Are you crazy? Pei Zio was so strong that Yun Ruoyan immediately tasted a metallic taste in her mouth, and a bright redness seeped out from the corner of her mouth. Then Pei Zio snatched the bowl from Xianxia's hands, pinched Yun Ruoyan's chin, and poured the medicine down her throat. Pei Zio. Yun Ruoyan choked on the medicine, raised her head, and gritted her teeth. Pei Zio. I won't let you off. There's a next life. I'll make you pay for this with your blood. Yun Ruoyan's eyes widened, and her scarlet eyes burned with fury. Her venomous gaze made Pei Zio's hair stand on end, and he even had the urge to run away. As soon as Yun Ruoyan finished speaking, she felt her chest tighten, and a gush of blood gushed out of her throat. Fresh blood splattered on the ground, a particularly bright red. Pei Zio composed himself. He really didn't want to see this disgusting woman again, and he didn't want to look at her venomous eyes again. He quickly turned around and ordered, "You guys, throw her out. Don't let her die in the Pei Manor, she's filthy." Xianxia looked at Yun Ruoyan being carried out and smiled coldly. Retribution? I'm looking forward to it. Unfortunately, that useless Yun Ruoyan won't be able to see it in this lifetime. Chapter 2. It was still raining, and Yun Ruoyan had been thrown onto the streets by the servants of the Pei Manor, as if she were a dead dog. On the streets, a few people were still discussing the matter of the Yun and Lin families being beheaded today. When they saw someone being thrown out of the Pei residence, they only thought that it was a servant girl who had committed a mistake and was not wanted by the Pei residence. No one thought that she was the mistress of the Pei residence or the young miss of the Yun family. The rain soaked Yun Ruoyan's body. Before marrying into the Pei Manor, she had quarreled with her maternal grandmother because of Pei Zio. Now it seemed that she had really been blind. Grandmother, she was the only person in the world who truly treated her well. No matter what, she had to see her one last time. Even if it was just to say sorry. After being tortured for so long, and after being poisoned, she couldn't stand up on her own. After a few unsuccessful attempts, she could only crawl on the ground, using her arm strength to crawl forward bit by bit. The rainwater was mixed with tears and blood, leaving hideous marks on the long street. The Meridian Gate was right in front of her. But before she could reach it, she heard a voice say, "It's time." No. Yun Ruoyan stretched out her hands in the direction of the Meridian Gate and screamed at the top of her lungs, but her voice was completely drowned out by the sound of the rain. By the time Yun Ruoyan reacted, all she could see was the blood that had spread through the rain. The blood had spread along the rain to Yun Ruoyan's skirt, and the entire scene of the execution grounds had become hideous and frightening. A line of bloody tears fell from the corner of her eyes. Was this the final outcome? In the end, she hadn't even been able to see her family for the last time. As she thought of this, Yun Ruoyan's heart skipped a beat. Her chaotic breathing reversed, and the blood in her throat gushed out. The taste of blood filled her nose and mouth. Finally, Yun Ruoyan couldn't hold it in any longer. She lay down in the rain and wailed. Her heart-wrenching cries seemed to be conveying all the grievances she had suffered over the past few years to the heavens. The Yun clan and Lin clan, which had once enjoyed a period of glory and splendor, actually ended up with their families destroyed and their heads separated from their bodies. And all of this, because she, Yun Ruoyan, had been deceived by vile people. She hated herself for not knowing the truth. She hated herself for being so naive. He hated the people who had harmed the Yun and Lin families to such an extent. She swore that if there was a next life, she would never allow herself to be trampled upon like this. She would never forgive those who had harmed her to this extent. An umbrella opened above Yun Ruoyan's head. Yun Ruoyan? Yun Ruoyan was sprawled on the ground. When she opened her eyes, All she could see was an ink-colored robe embroidered with gold, indicating the man's distinguished status. Daughter of the Yun family, this prince had thought that there would be a day when you would wake up and turn the tables. One couldn't sense the other party's emotions from his words. It was as if he was really just stating a fact. Ha! Xuanhuan curled up and sniffed the air that was filled with the stench of blood. Even if I become an evil ghost, I won't forgive them. That's more like the Xuanhuan I know. The black-robed man's voice rang out once more. He squatted down and brushed aside Xuanhuan's hair. You should know that the weak have no right to live. No right to live, is that it? The corners of Xuanhuan's lips curled up in a smile. The surrounding coldness grew even colder, almost freezing her breath. If she could do it all over again, she definitely wouldn't let this happen again. After a long while, the man didn't hear a reply. He placed a slender finger under the nose of the person on the ground and frowned. The black-robed guard by his side looked at the person on the ground, his face expressionless. Your Highness, it seems that she's already dead. Only then did the man withdraw his hand. Cough. Cough cough. When Xuanhuan regained consciousness, she felt a buzzing in her head. Her dantian felt a surge of energy and she coughed violently. Only when the energy subsided did Xuanhuan slowly open her eyes. She stared straight ahead for a long time, as if she had just woken up from a nightmare. Only after a long while did the fog in her eyes dissipate. Just then, a maid rushed to her side and exclaimed in surprise, "Miss, you're finally awake. Peony, you're really scared. How did you manage to sleep so soundly?" Xuanhuan stared at her in a daze, speechless for a long while. She vaguely remembered this face. It seemed to belong to one of her maids before she was married. She had a gentle and intelligent personality, but when she reached marriageable age, Madame had arranged for her to be married off and left the estate. But that was 3 years ago, and she hadn't seen this maid for 3 whole years. "Peony?" Xuanhuan asked tentatively. Peony hurriedly replied, "Miss, I'm here." Xuanhuan froze. What was going on? She remembered being fed poison by Pei Zio, and the bloody scene of the Yun and Lin families being executed. She remembered collapsing in the rain, and then losing consciousness. She should be dead. Peony shouldn't have appeared in front of her. Unless he was reincarnated. "Miss, what's wrong?" Seeing Xuanhuan's silence, Peony glanced suspiciously at her mistress. "Miss, if we don't go to the old madam's now, we'll be late." Xuanhuan's mind was in a daze. She tossed aside her blankets and sat up. "Peony, my head hurts. Tell me what happened." "Miss, you slept until the sun was high up in the sky. No wonder you have a headache." Peony helped Xuanhuan up. "The old madam just sent word that the jade ornament bestowed by the Empress Dowager a few days ago has gone missing, and she's summoning everyone to go over. We can't delay any longer." Xuanhuan paused. Grandmother, the Empress Dowager, the jade ornament, gone missing. She remembered all of this very clearly. But that was 5 years ago. She remembered how much of a commotion the incident had caused. In the end, for some reason, the blame had been placed on her head, and she had been punished to kneel in the ancestral hall. But she hadn't touched the jade ornament at all. She had been framed. And because of this incident, even her grandmother had been quite displeased with her. Could it be that she had really returned to 5 years ago? She who had died at the hands of Yi Qianying and Pei Zio, had been given a new lease on life. Xuanhuan sat in front of her dressing table. In the mirror, she saw a rather youthful face, but there was a scarlet birthmark on the right side of her face, extending from the corner of her eye to the base of her nose. It was a particularly frightening sight. Xuanhuan raised her hand and touched the birthmark on her face. Had the heavens heard her pleas? Had they given her a chance to be reborn? Had they given her a chance to live again? Since that was the case, she would definitely not disappoint God's love. She would definitely make those people who had painstakingly plotted against her pay with blood. She remembered very clearly that Yi Qianying had stolen the jade ornament. In her past life, she hadn't dared to reveal the truth because of her inferiority complex. Since the heavens had given her a chance to be reborn, she wouldn't repeat the same mistake. And Pei Zio, she would make him pay. "Peony, you only need to freshen up. Grandmother's matters are urgent, so don't keep her waiting," Xuanhuan said coldly. Peony looked up at Xuanhuan through her glasses. She could vaguely sense that Xuanhuan seemed a little different after this long slumber, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Peony only dared to glance at Xuanhuan for a moment before lowering her head and combing Xuanhuan's long hair. Yes, Mississippi. A short while later, Xuanhuan was escorted to the main hall by Peony. Chapter 3. The young masters and misses of the Yun family were all present in the great hall. The Yun matriarch sat at the head of the table, her brows furrowed and her eyes closed in meditation. Xuanhuan, dressed in plain white, bowed and stood respectfully to the side. Beside her stood her second sister Yun Ruoyao, her third sister Yun Ruoyu and her cousin Yi Qianying. Seeing that everyone was present, the matriarch glanced at Madame N, who stepped forward. A few days ago the Empress Dowager bestowed upon me a precious artifact, a jade scepter inlaid with a pearl from the southern seas. A few days ago this treasure was suddenly stolen. Who took it? You'd better come forward now, or you'll be in deep trouble if anyone finds out. Yun Ruoyan stood ramrod straight, glancing at Yi Qianying from the corner of her eyes. Yi Qianying was only 14 years old, and Yun Ruoyan expected to see a trace of panic and nervousness on her face. What Yun Ruoyan didn't expect was for Yi Qianying to hold her head high, her lips pursed, as if she were trying her best to suppress her anxiety. At such a young age, it was no wonder that she was able to win the favor of the entire Yun family. What Yun Ruoyan didn't know was that while she was secretly observing Yi Qianying, Madame N was also observing her. Madame N understood Yun Ruoyan's personality well. Whenever something big happened, she would shrink back like a startled bird. Normally Yun Ruoyan would have been scared out of her wits, but today she stood calmly in the great hall, as if she were a completely different person. Sensing Madame N's gaze, Yun Ruoyan tilted her head, revealing the scarlet birthmark at the corner of her eye. The scarlet color was startling. Madame N calmed herself down and averted her gaze. What was she thinking? This was the ugly, useless and incompetent Yun Ruoyan of the Yun family. Madame N's gaze swept across the great hall. Anyone who doesn't report what they know will be punished as well. As soon as he finished speaking, the silent hall was filled with the sound of people sucking in cold air. Madame N's sharp gaze immediately locked onto the source of the sound. Qianying, do you have something to say? Madame N asked. Hearing this, everyone in the hall shifted their attention to Yi Qianying. Even the great-grandmother, who was sitting in the main seat, narrowed her eyes slightly, waiting for Yi Qianying's next move. Yi Qianying's eyes were filled with panic as she fell to her knees. Grandmother, Aunt. Qianying doesn't dare to say. It was obvious that Yi Qianying knew something. How could Madame N let go of this opportunity to establish her authority and improve her grandmother's favor? Raising her voice, she said, Speak your mind. As long as I'm here, I'll give you justice. Yun Ruoyu, who had always been straightforward, also interjected. That's right, Qianying. With grandmother and the others around, you don't have to be afraid. Qianying really wouldn't dare. Yi Qianying was kneeling on the ground, her tone somewhat aggrieved, but she didn't forget to glance at Yun Ruoyan from time to time. Anyone with a discerning eye would understand what this meant. Madame N glanced at Yun Ruoyan, surprised to find that the good-for-nothing of the Yun family hadn't been frightened out of her wits. In fact, she seemed even more arrogant than before. The Yun matriarch frowned as she looked at Yi Qianying on the ground. Only when she saw Yun Ruoyan's calm expression did her expression soften. The hall was silent. No one spoke, as if they had dug a pit and were waiting for their prey to jump in. In fact, in her past life, Yun Ruoyan had indeed done so. Yi Qianying had been eloquent, and Madame N had pressed on. How could Yun Ruoyan have been a match for them? Naturally, she had become a victim of the hasty resolution of the matter. But this time, she wouldn't let the tragedy repeat itself. Why are you all looking at me? Sister, why have you stopped? If you have something to say, just say it. Yun Ruoyan smiled. This development was beyond Yi Qianying's expectations. She looked at Yun Ruoyan suspiciously, her eyes full of surprise. Yun Ruoyan's expression was one of aloofness that she had never seen before, and her aura was so oppressive that Yi Qianying found it hard to breathe. She could only brace herself and say, I saw Sister Ruoyan steal the jade ornament. Her words shocked everyone present. Madame N immediately exclaimed, Yun Ruoyan, you're the sole wife-born daughter of the Yun family. How could you do something like this? Moreover, this jade ornament was bestowed upon you by the Empress Dowager. What right do you have to steal it? Yun Ruoyu also joined in. Sister, are you afraid of being poor? Aren't you afraid of being laughed at for stealing from your own family? Yun Ruoyao's eyes darted around as she chimed in. Sister, I know you don't usually receive any gifts, not even gold or jade. But if you really want it, we can give it to you. Why steal it? Madame N gave Yun Ruoyao a look of approval before sighing and turning to Yun Ruoyan. How could you do something like this? Hurry up and apologize to grandmother. Return the ornament and we can pretend this never happened. Yun Ruoyan laughed coldly in her heart, but her lips curled as she looked at them silently. Seeing that Xuanhuan hadn't moved, Madame began to panic. She had long since disliked Xuanhuan, but now this useless young miss was ignoring even her words. Was she trying to rebel? Madame waved her sleeves, raised her voice and pressed on. Xuanhuan, do you hear me? Return the ornament. That's not something you can take. Xuanhuan raised her head and met Madame's gaze. I can't hand it over. What? Could it be that you sold it? Madame raised an eyebrow as she rebuked sternly. Sure. How could the Yun family have an unfilial daughter like you? Xuanhuan raised her voice. How can I return something I've never taken, second madam? The Yun matriarch, who had been frowning and resting, opened her eyes for the second time, her gaze still on Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan walked to the center of the hall. Second madam, I've never admitted to taking the ornament. How can you conclude that I took it from my cousin's side of the story? If it wasn't you then? Madame wanted to continue accusing Xuanhuan, but when she met Xuanhuan's resolute gaze, she felt a little guilty and hurriedly tossed the topic to Qianning. Qianning, tell me, when did you see her take it? Tell me everything clearly. Qianning's eyes flashed. She had thought that Xuanhuan would have to dig a hole for herself, but she hadn't expected that she would be the one to be blamed for it. She could only brace herself and say, yes. Last night, when I went out for a walk, I saw a figure run out of the Yun matriarch's room. That person ran so fast that she bumped into me, and only then did I realize that it was Sister Ruoyan. At the time she was hugging a jade ornament. Yun Ruoyan smiled coldly. In reality, it was clearly Yun Ruoyan who had accidentally seen Qianning steal the ornament. Now that Qianning had swapped their identities, she was trying to pin the crime of theft on Yun Ruoyan. Chapter 4. Yun Ruoyan ignored her and turned to her grandmother. I'm innocent. Grandmother, if you trust me, I'll definitely help you retrieve the jade ornament and find the culprit. No one had expected the usually meek Yun Ruoyan to say something like this. Even Qianning was flustered. Her grandmother finally looked at Yun Ruoyan with some appreciation. You'll be able to find out? I've been slandered today and I have to prove my innocence. I can't be wrongly accused. I hope you'll give me this chance, Yun Ruoyan declared loudly. She knew her grandmother well. In the entire Yun family, only her grandmother valued her. However, because she had been too cowardly, her grandmother had always been resentful of her for failing to live up to her expectations. In her past life, after she had been framed for stealing the jade ornament, her grandmother had been disheartened by her. This time she was confident that she could change all of that. Qianning wanted to be the center of attention, to be loved by everyone, but Yun Ruoyan was determined to destroy all of that. Grandmother, I did see Sister Qianning that night. However, I wasn't the one who stole the jade ornament. Yun Ruoyan paused and slowly looked toward Qianning. Everyone's gaze followed Yun Ruoyan's, landing on the gentle figure of Qianning. She was the one who stole the ornament. Yun Ruoyan waved her sleeves and pointed at Qianning. Qianning's body trembled. She hadn't expected Yun Ruoyan to expose her in front of everyone. She was used to seeing Yun Ruoyan's timidity and silence, but her opponent's words were too harsh for Qianning to handle. Qianning was about to open her mouth to defend herself when Yun Ruoyan cut in. That night, when I passed by grandmother's place, I saw Sister Qianning running away with something in her arms. I didn't understand why Qianning was so flustered before, but after Qianning reversed the events of that night and framed me, I finally understood that what Qianning was carrying was the jade ornament that she had stolen. Yun Ruoyan knelt on the ground and spoke with utmost sincerity. Grandmother, I know that I haven't received as much as my sisters, but I've never harbored any ill intentions, nor would I allow myself to tarnish the name of the Yun family. I don't like to argue with others, but I can't admit to the crime of theft today. Sister Ruoyan. Qianning's hands trembled as she forced herself to stand. Qianning has never stolen anything, so what proof do you have? Grandmother. Qianning is innocent. Evidence? Yun Ruoyan looked at Qianning coldly. Qianning, if you're truly innocent, do you dare to have someone search you? You. Qianning was tongue-tied, her slender finger trembling as she pointed at Yun Ruoyan. The old matriarch looked at Qianning, whose lips were trembling, and then at Yun Ruoyan, who was kneeling on the ground with a brave expression on her face. She made up her mind. Let's go to the fragrant pavilion. The mighty army immediately rushed to the fragrant pavilion where Qianning was staying. With a single command, all the servants rushed in, their movements gentle and careful. Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but think back to when she'd been searched. Her entire room had been turned upside down, and even her bedding had been pulled to the floor. When they couldn't find anything, they claimed that she'd sold the jade ornament. But now, Xianxia's treatment was much better than his. The old grandmother saw this and sighed but did not say anything. She was more interested in seeing Yun Ruoyan's reaction. The next second, Yun Ruoyan spoke up. "Second, madam, it seems that the servants of our manor are lax in their management. Why are they so listless when they're searching? If others see this, they'll think that the head of the Yun manor has a poor reputation, and that even the servants are lax in their work." Madame Anne's expression turned somewhat awkward. When had this first miss of the Yun manor become so eloquent? The old matriarch's expression was indifferent. Even though it was clearly her possession that had gone missing, she had no intention of interfering. Madame Anne could only order, "Be alert. Search carefully. Don't miss a single corner." Xianxia's expression immediately changed, and Yun Ruoyan smiled. Suddenly Yun Ruoyan's gaze shifted and she walked forward. "Wait." In front of her dressing table, a servant was holding an exquisite makeup box. Just as he was about to pick it up, Xianxia snatched it back. This was a box that Xianxia's late mother had left for her. Yun Ruoyan had seen it once before and it was filled with all sorts of jewels. "Sister Xianxia, what's this?" Xianxia panicked, but she pretended to be calm. "This is a jewel that mother left for me. Grandmother and aunt both know about it." Madame Anne naturally didn't miss the flash of panic in Xianxia's eyes. Although Xianxia wasn't even half a member of the Yun family, compared to Yun Ruoyan, who was a mere wife-born daughter of the Yun family, Xianxia was far superior to Yun Ruoyan. Madame Anne hurried over to mediate the situation. "Yes, we all know that. Xianxia is filial, and she treasures the jewel that mother left behind. There's no need to look at it." "So there was no need to look at it?" Yun Ruoyan smiled coldly. She really didn't understand Madame Anne's logic. Yun Ruoyan smiled. "Since this is such a treasure, why don't you open it and let us take a look? If there really isn't anything inside, won't you be able to prove your innocence?" Xianxia hugged the box tightly, her face bright red. Finally the old matriarch spoke up. "Xianxia, give me the key." Xianxia could only take out the key from her pocket. She bit her lip, her face red, but she didn't have the courage to actually open the box. The key slipped out and Xianxia knelt down once more. "Grandmother." Xianxia was wrong. Xianxia was just muddle-headed for a moment. "I won't do it again." Everyone present was shocked. None of them had expected the usually obedient Xianxia to actually steal the jade ornament. Xianxia was kneeling on the ground, her head buried. All that could be seen was her trembling shoulders, as if she were about to burst into tears at any moment. Yun Ruoyu simply picked up the key on the ground and opened the makeup box with a click. "It really is a jade ornament," Yun Ruoyu exclaimed. "My goodness, Xianxia, you actually know how to steal? And you're even trying to frame eldest sister." Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but laugh. This Yun Ruoyu had really helped her out quite a bit. Yun Ruoyao was just as shocked. After all, she was the person closest to Xianxia. Madame Anne felt a little embarrassed. After all, she had been speaking up for Xianxia all this time. She turned to the old matriarch. "Mother, what do you think we should do? Do you need me to tell you what to do?" The old matriarch frowned. "Madame Anne Ruoyan is the eldest daughter of the Yun family. Since when can an outsider bully the eldest daughter of the Yun family?" Xianxia knelt on the ground, as silent as a cicada in winter. Even Madame Anne's heart ached for her. She had wanted to minimize the problem, but from the old matriarch's tone, it seemed that she had to be severely punished. Madame Anne sighed. "Servants, bring Miss E to the ancestral hall and have her kneel for a day." Chapter 5. The nights in the Yun manor were unbearably long. Yun Ruoyan had so many questions that she wanted answers to that she didn't even eat dinner. Instead, she lay by the window thinking about the details of her past life. "Miss, what are you thinking about?" Xilan brought breakfast over. "Miss, did you know? Just now, when Missy was being punished to kneel, young Master Pei came over and secretly gave her some food." Yun Ruoyan paused. Pei Zio had been the same in her past life. When she had been punished to kneel, it had also been Pei Zio who had secretly given her food. This was why she had become so fond of him and why she liked to play with him. She had thought that he was the only person who didn't mind her birthmark or her lack of cultivation talent. But that wasn't the case. "Does second madam know?" Yun Ruoyan asked. "Of course. But I didn't see her say anything," Xilan replied. Yun Ruoyan smiled coldly. She still remembered that Madame Anne had locked her up and beaten her half to death when she had caught her eating. Now that it was Xianxia, her treatment was completely different. Seeing Shilan's expression change, Peony hurriedly stuffed a pastry into her mouth. "You're too talkative." Shilan didn't seem angry. She chewed on the osmanthus cake in her mouth and said, "Delicious." Xuanhuan was in a state of agitation. "You two can leave for now. I'll be alone for a while." Shilan was about to say something else, but Peony pulled her back. After the previous incident, Peony had noticed the change in Xuanhuan, and she wanted to help her, even if only to give her some space to think. The room was empty, and Xuanhuan's thoughts couldn't stop. When she was young, she had been judged to be a cultivation genius, but at some point her talent had been declining. Now she was stuck at the level of a novice blade master, unable to advance any further. In contrast, the birthmark on her face, which hadn't seemed to exist before, had grown larger and larger as she grew older. Why was this happening? Could it be that she had come into contact with something as she grew up that caused her appearance and talent to change so drastically? As she was thinking, the sound of a heavy object hitting the ground interrupted her. She quickly picked up a candlestick by her side to protect herself and walked out of the courtyard. Just as he walked out of the courtyard, he saw a black figure lying on the ground. There was an eye-catching wound on his calf, and fresh blood was gushing out. Xuanhuan looked around cautiously. After confirming that no one was around, she gripped the candlestick tightly in her hand and slowly approached him to check his breathing. Fortunately, there was still hope. Xuanhuan quickly rolled up her sleeves and tried to carry him into her room, but she didn't have enough strength. This person's identity was unknown. If he rashly attracted the Yun family's people, who knew what kind of trouble would occur? Xuanhuan began to worry. She tried to pull the man's collar, but her wrist was suddenly grabbed. Startled, Xuanhuan raised her head abruptly, only to see a face with distinct features. In the dark night, only that person's eyes were as bright as black pearls, with a kind of fearsome ruthlessness. Xuanhuan's heart was in her throat. His strength was too great. If he really came with ill intentions, she wasn't sure if she could really escape. The man in black didn't speak, but his eyes flashed as if there was a layer of fog lingering and condensing. Xuanhuan then realized that this person was strange. His body temperature was abnormally high. Although her wrist was in pain from being grabbed, from his slightly trembling arm, Xuanhuan could feel that he was trying his best to control himself. He was restraining his strength from hurting her, restraining himself from taking the next step. Xuanhuan gathered her courage and asked, "Who are you and why are you here?" The man didn't respond but only tightened his grip on her. Xuanhuan struggled a few times but to no avail. She simply gave up and continued to attack with words, "Your injuries are very serious. Although I'm the eldest daughter of this family, I'm of no practical use. I'll try my best to find a doctor for you." After hearing the words eldest daughter, the man's arm trembled, and a strong force seemed to want to pierce through Xuanhuan's wrist. Xuanhuan was in pain. "What are you doing? Let go." The man lowered his eyes, his brows furrowed as if he was trying his best to endure something. After a long while, he squeezed out a single word, "Don't." "Don't?" Xuanhuan was confused. "Don't call a doctor." Before he could finish speaking, Xuanhuan's small lips were pressed against a scorching hot one. Xuanhuan's eyes widened. She had been kissed by someone? Almost subconsciously, Xuanhuan's palm struck out at the man's chest, but she was stopped midway by the man's grip. In a panic, Xuanhuan kicked the man's bleeding calf. The man let go in pain, but instead of getting angry, he smiled. "It's really you." "What do you mean it's really you?" Xuanhuan felt that the tone of his voice was somewhat familiar, but she couldn't recall who it was. "Help me treat my injuries." It was a commanding tone. Xuanhuan wasn't happy. It was this man who had suddenly barged into the Yun manor, and she could have found a servant to throw him out at any time, leaving him to fend for himself. What right did he have to order her around? Seeing Xuanhuan's displeasure, the man raised his hand and locked it around Xuanhuan's neck. "You have to save me. I can kill you at any time even if I'm injured." Xuanhuan couldn't help but frown. She didn't like being threatened, and the man's attitude made her extremely uncomfortable. She said in a joking tone, "What if you want to harm me after you've recovered? I wouldn't dare save you." The man's Adam's apple bobbed and he felt his body heat up even more. He was already trying his best to suppress the effects of the drug, but this woman just had to provoke him. Right now he wasn't just in case of wanting to harm her but always of wanting to harm her. How could Xuanhuan know what the man was thinking? All she saw was that his eyes were red and burning, as if he wanted to eat her alive. "Xuanhuan," the man suddenly said Xuanhuan's name. "Do you want to get rid of the birthmark on your face?" Hearing him call out her name and mention the word birthmark, Xuanhuan immediately grew wary and looked at him warily. The man continued, I can think of a way to get rid of the birthmark. You save me and I'll help you. We'll benefit from each other. It had to be said that this exchange was truly tempting. Xuanhuan gently touched the scarlet birthmark on her cheek. Her eyes flashed, but her tone was cold. Why should I believe you? You've been poisoned. The man in black used a calm tone to come to a conclusion that left Xuanhuan dumbfounded. His eyes were as deep as the sea, but they had a convincing power. The birthmark on Xuanhuan's face had grown slowly. It had been there for as long as she could remember, and it had been growing. Xuanhuan had never considered the possibility of being poisoned. And this person had made such a deduction with just a glance. Xuanhuan stared at the deep eyes in the darkness. All right, I'll help you. Chapter 6. Xuanhuan hurriedly helped him up, using all her strength to drag him back to her own room. The black-clothed man sat on the bed, his eyes shut as he forcefully suppressed the effects of the medicine in his body. Sweat began to drip from his forehead. The room was brightly lit, and it was only then that Xuanhuan could clearly see the man's appearance. His features were chiseled and his eyes were bright. No matter how she looked at him, he was a rare, elegant gentleman. Being kissed by such a man didn't seem to be a bad thing. As Xuanhuan thought about it, she examined his injuries. After all, Xuanhuan wasn't a physician, and she didn't have much medicine on hand. Most of it was medicine for wounds. When she saw the several-inch-deep wound on the man's chest, Xuanhuan's heart trembled. If the sword had missed its target by even a fraction of an inch, this man's heart would have been severed. Xuanhuan stole a glance at the black-clothed man. He was resting with his eyes closed, but his tightly furrowed brows revealed his forbearance. Was he still unwilling to seek out a physician even at this point? Xuanhuan carefully bandaged the last wound. I can only give you a simple treatment. You've suffered a serious internal injury and you'll need more intensive treatment. The black-clothed man replied, buttoning his robes and walking out of the room. Xuanhuan continued to wash the blood-stained towel. Without looking at him, she said coldly, Don't forget your promise. The black-clothed man stopped at the door. His eyebrows twitched and the corners of his lips curled up. I mean what I say. The next day Xuanhuan washed up and changed into an embroidered blue satin robe. She planned to visit her cousins at her maternal grandfather's house, but someone came knocking on her door early in the morning. Xuanhuan had her hands on her hips as she stood in front of her room muttering, Xuanhuan, come out. It's all because of you that Xianxia was punished. Explain everything clearly. Xuanhuan didn't understand. Xuanhuan had been present when she'd been investigating Yurui, and she'd even spoken up for her at the time. Why had her sister's attitude changed so drastically after a single night? Xuanhuan really didn't want to deal with such trivial matters. She glanced sideways at Xuanhuan and asked patiently, What do you want me to explain? Xianxia was punished to kneel in the ancestral hall because of you. Who are you dressing up for? Xuanhuan glared at Xuanhuan angrily. Xuanhuan laughed. Xianxia had been punished to kneel, but couldn't she just pack up and leave by herself? Xuanhuan, you were there the entire time yesterday. Didn't you feel delighted when Xianxia was punished for hiding her jade ornament? What? Who are you putting on an act for? Xuanhuan laughed. Xuanhuan's thousands of insults and venomous words were choked in her throat, and her face reddened. She hadn't expected that Xuanhuan, who had always been a pushover, would actually speak up against her. I didn't know that you actually dared to frame Xianxia. I'm the one who was framed, Xuanhuan stated the truth. Exasperated, Xuanhuan shoved Xuanhuan's shoulder. Don't even think about it. Last night, Xianxia cried the entire night. She said you put it in the dresser. Unable to defend herself, she reluctantly admitted to the crime. Otherwise, how would you have known that the jade ornament was in the dresser? You're clearly trying to frame me. Xuanhuan frowned. As soon as she heard this, she understood that Xianxia had obviously used her harmless appearance to put on a bitter play last night. In addition, the family had always thought that Xianxia was a good girl, so when she cried and complained, it was easy to turn the truth upside down. But this Xuanhuan was far too easily swayed, and she had come to Xuanhuan's residence without a word. Xuanhuan glared at Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan, we treated you like an older sister, but what did you do? Why did you frame Xianxia? Treat me like an older sister? Xuanhuan wanted to laugh even harder. Since you've treated me like an older sister, you should know that a concubine-born daughter like you has no right to speak in my residence. You? Xuanhuan's cheeks turned red with anger. How dare an ugly girl like Xuanhuan speak to her in such a tone? She was just a piece of trash born a few years too early. What right did she have? Slap. Xuanhuan's slender fingernail cut across Xuanhuan's cheek, right on top of her birthmark. Dark red blood seeped out of her cheek and both of them were stunned. Peony was the first to react, rushing forward to support Xuanhuan. Naturally, Xuanhuan didn't back down and frowned. Slap. Another crisp sound, but this time, it landed on Yunruoyu's face. Yunruoyu clutched her cheek, her eyes wide. She couldn't believe it. She had actually been slapped by Yunruoyan? Yunruoyu raised her hand to return the slap, but Yunruoyan grabbed her wrist tightly. Yunruoyan's voice was cold. Yunruoyu, yesterday's affair was decided by the old madam and the second madam, and everyone was present. If you're not satisfied, why don't the two of us go to the old madam right now? Yunruoyu's anger immediately dissipated when she heard the old madam's words. She had seen how protective the old madam had been of Yunruoyan yesterday. Who wants to go to the old madam with you? Yunruoyan, let go of me. Yunruoyan flung her hand away. Yunruoyu rubbed her wrist, snorted and left with her maids. Miss, look at this bracelet. Peony's gaze landed on Yunruoyan's silver bracelet. The blood that had flowed from her birthmark had somehow stained the table, and where the blood had stained the table, there was now a patch of black copper filth. Poison. Yunruoyan frowned. There was poison in her body. That was why the blood had stained the bracelet. That black-clothed man was right. Thousands of possibilities flashed through Yunruoyan's mind, and she didn't dare linger. After instructing Peony not to speak of the matter to anyone else, she hurriedly left the room with her. Yunruoyan's grandfather, Lin Zainin, was the best pill master in the Li Kingdom. He would definitely have a cure for the poison. Strangely enough, for some reason, all the members of the Lin family from Yunruoyan's mother's generation had either died or left. Ever since Yunruoyan had known about the Lin family, other than her grandfather, only her two cousins remained. In her previous life, because the Yuns didn't like her associating with the Lins, she had deliberately avoided them. Later, because Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingchen had informed the Lins of Pei Zio's affair with Yi Qianying, her grandfather had also objected to her being with Pei Zio. But at the time, Yunruoyan had been too engrossed in her fantasies to listen to him. In the end, she had done what she regretted the most, cut off all ties with the Lins. In this life, she couldn't afford to make the same mistake again. If she could, she was willing to use the rest of her life to make up for it. To make up for her disloyalty to her grandfather, and for her distrust of her two cousins. Chapter 7. As a prominent family in the Li Kingdom, even though the Lin family was sparsely populated, the Lin family's lofty gates revealed their status in the kingdom. As soon as Yunruoyan entered, her two cousins ran out excitedly and ran up to her legs. Sister, you haven't come to see us in so long. She didn't know if it was just her imagination playing tricks on her, but she felt that these two words sounded better than any of the other sisters of the Yun family. Yunruoyan followed them to Lin Zainin's pill-making chambers. Lin Zainin seemed to be pleasantly surprised by his granddaughter's arrival, and hurriedly invited her to rest by the folding screen of the furnace. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Yunruoyan went straight to the point and took out the silver bracelet on her wrist. Lin Zainin recognized it immediately. It was the dowry he had prepared for Yunruoyan's mother, who had later gifted it to her. The only difference was that the intricate patterns on the bracelet had been stained black. There's poison in your body? Lin Zainin's gaze landed on Yunruoyan's birthmark. Yunruoyan sighed inwardly. As expected of the Empire's top pill master, his eyes were sharp and shrewd. Grandfather, I suspect that someone in the Yun family planted a slow-acting poison in my body. Lin Zainin was a little surprised by his granddaughter's courage, but he didn't think too much about it. Instead, he stroked his white beard in thought. Ruoyan, if you can bear the pain, I can take a look at what poison it is. Yunruoyan hurriedly replied, It's only pain, of course I can bear it. Lin Zainin glanced at her approvingly, then waved his hand and ordered his two cousins to get the tools to extract the blood. Ruoyan, do you still remember your past self? Lin Zainin asked. Yunruoyan stared at the top pill master on the Xuanhuan continent, her thoughts drifting back to a few years ago. Back then she had been deemed a rare pill master, but for some reason her talent had grown weaker and weaker. Now she couldn't even break through to the third rank of a blade master. On the Xuanhuan continent, even the most mediocre blade master could become a third-rank blade master. Not only that, but as Yunruoyan's innate talent faded, the birthmark on her face grew larger and larger. If the appearance of this birthmark was related to Yunruoyan's poisoning, Then was it possible? Grandfather, are you saying that this poison has limited my talent for cultivation? Xuanhuan ventured a guess. Lin Zainan nodded, his heart heavy. That's very likely. I'll spend a few more days researching and hopefully I'll be able to find a cure. Xuanhuan thought for a moment. Have you heard of a similar poison before? It's precisely because I've never heard of it that I'm even more worried. Lin Zainan said, I've retired for a long time. Perhaps there will be a new talent in the world of martial artists who can create medicine. Yes. Thank you for your concern, grandfather. I have some matters to attend to at home, so I'll be taking my leave. Go. Lin Zainan didn't urge her to stay, and he watched as she bowed and left. This time Xuanhuan was much more composed than before. Lin Zainan noticed this, and although he was a little confused, he was more than happy. He watched quietly as Xuanhuan left, then slowly closed the door. Xuanhuan returned to her rooms and ordered Peony to gather all the servants in the manor. The reason she'd rushed back so quickly was because she knew that, since she'd been afflicted with a slow-acting poison, it had to have been done by someone close to her. It seemed that she'd have to clean up the people in her rooms. She trusted both Peony and Xilan. Peony had always been protective of her, or Madame, and wouldn't have viewed her as a thorn in her side. Although Xilan had been a bit of a thief, that was only after she'd married into the Pei Manor. Having lost her power and influence, Xilan could only rely on these little tricks to maintain the two of them's livelihoods. Although Xuanhuan had gathered all the servants in her rooms, there were only 4 or 5 of them. Xuanhuan sipped her tea, not in a hurry, as she quietly observed the movements of the servants in the manor. In the beginning, the servants were still lazily whispering to each other. Some of them were even tired of kneeling and wanted to cross the line and ask questions. However, they were stopped by Xilan's stare. As time passed, the servants of Xuanhuan's cottage began to feel a little guilty. When they looked up at Xuanhuan again, the first miss of the Yun family was still sipping her tea as if she didn't exist. For the first time, these servants felt a trace of authority from this ugly girl. Finally she spoke up. I like peace and quiet, and my rooms are a small place, so there's no need for so many people here. If anyone wants to leave, just take 3 taels of silver from Peony and leave the manor to make a living. 3 taels? Someone in the crowd exclaimed in surprise. Xuanhuan glanced at him and he quickly lowered his head. For a long while no one spoke again. My rooms aren't like the residences of the other misses and madams, and I'm sure none of you are comfortable here. I'm not liked by my father, but I have no intention of changing the status quo. If you want to leave, go to Peony and get some silver. It'll be enough for you to buy a shop and live a good life. This is your only chance, and if you miss it, there won't be a next time. As soon as she finished speaking, she heard a timid voice. Miss, I'll accept it. Xuanhuan smiled and motioned for Peony to hand over the silver. Xilan stared at the shiny silver, and for a long time she was reluctant to take it out. Before long, of the 5 servants, only a girl of 16 or 17 remained kneeling on the ground, her eyes flickering. Xuanhuan could tell that she was tempted. Won't you accept it? Miss, Ling Lan is willing to serve you for the rest of my life. I won't betray you. The girl lowered her head. Xuanhuan laughed coldly. She glanced at Peony and Xilan. Xilan seemed to still be traumatized by the loss of a few taels of silver, while Peony, on the other hand, was frowning deeply. Peony was truly intelligent. She hadn't even said a word, but Peony had already understood her intentions. 3 taels of silver wasn't a small sum, and there wasn't much to be gained from living in her rooms. How could the servants be loyal to a disgraced miss like her? There had to be a reason why Ling Lan had chosen to stay, even when the pros and cons were so obvious. This reason could only be that she had been entrusted with a task, and that she was loyal to it. In fact, the benefits she had received from her client were far greater than these 3 taels of silver. How dare you? Xuanhuan threw her teacup on the ground. Ling Lan trembled, finally realizing that something was amiss. How dare you poison your mistress, Ling Lan? Xuanhuan spat out the truth of the matter. By her side, Peony and Xilan finally understood what had happened, and their faces were filled with shock. Chapter 8. Ling Lan crouched down. Miss, I'm innocent. What poison? Ling Lan didn't know. Didn't know? Xuanhuan raised her voice. Peony saw what you did a few days ago. Xuanhuan's words were meant to trick her, but Ling Lan panicked. She kowtowed several times. Miss, Ling Lan was wrong. Ling Lan knows she was wrong. I beg Miss to spare Ling Lan. Spare you? Xuanhuan laughed coldly. Let me ask you, where did you get that poison? This? Ling Lan stammered as if she couldn't bring herself to speak. At this point, why aren't you telling me? Xilan shouted. I wouldn't dare. Ling Lan's voice was tearful and she was clearly terrified. Someone from the second madam's side, isn't it? Yun Ruoyan answered for her. It wasn't hard to guess. Although Yi Qianying was ruthless, she was still a young miss living in the Yun household. She didn't have that much power or courage. The third madam was doted on by her father, and Yun Ruoyu wasn't as scheming, so it was even less likely that she was from the third madam's side. In that case, only the second madam was left. I can't keep you in the Yun household any longer. I won't expose you, but you have to leave the Yun household tonight. Yun Ruoyan issued an ultimatum. Ling Lan finally burst into tears. Miss, please don't. I can't leave the Yun household. Miss, I won't sit around and do stupid things anymore. Miss, please let Ling Lan stay, let Ling Lan stay. The quiet courtyard was filled with the sound of Ling Lan kowtowing incessantly. Yun Ruoyan watched as Ling Lan kowtowed louder and louder. I can let you stay, but you have to promise me one thing. Miss, please tell me. Ling Lan will do anything. I want you to pretend that nothing happened. Yun Ruoyan's eyes flashed cunningly, including getting the poison from the second madam. As soon as she finished speaking, Ling Lan jerked her head up. Peony and Xilan also looked at Yun Ruoyan in surprise. What she meant was for Ling Lan to help her keep an eye on Madame Anne's every move. Yes, Ling Lan understands. Mentally and physically exhausted, Yun Ruoyan sat in front of the vanity mirror and rested. Peony walked up to her. Miss, why did you? Xilan also came over. That's right, Mississippi. Now that everyone's gone, there's only me and Sister Peony left. It's going to be even harder to manage. Moreover, you gave them so much silver. This is the entire fortune of our courtyard. Yun Ruoyan smiled, took out her makeup box and picked out a pair of jade hairpins. She gave Peony and Xilan one each. These hairpins are worth far more than those 3 taels of silver. Xilan was really easy to coax. She smiled happily and said, Thank you, miss. Peony stopped Xilan's hand. Miss, this is something your mother left for you. We can't accept it. Just take it. Yun Ruoyan smiled. Just then, a soft, clear female voice came from outside her cottage. Sister, we're here to apologize to you. Yun Ruoyan frowned. By the time she reacted, Yun Ruoyao and Yi Qianying had already brought Yun Ruoyu to her, and even her cousin Yun Moyuan had followed them. Yun Ruoyan frowned. She really didn't want to give her any peace of mind. I heard that Ruoyu hurt you today, so I brought Ruoyu over to apologize to you. Is your face hurt? Yun Ruoyao asked as she examined Yun Ruoyu's injury. What a deep wound. Ruoyu, don't you know that I'm not even a third-rank blade master yet? Why did you have to hit me so hard? Yun Ruoyu suppressed her laughter and pretended to be concerned. Yes, I'll be more careful in the future. With that face of hers, it doesn't matter if it's injured or not. No one would want to see it anyway. Yun Moyuan's disdainful voice came from behind. He turned to Yi Qianying. Qianying, you're the only one who's good for you. Why are you trying to comfort this vicious woman? Yun Ruoyan's gaze landed on Yi Qianying. So it was Yi Qianying who had instigated this whole farce. Yi Qianying frowned and tugged at Yun Moyuan. Cousin, don't say that. I'm sure it's not easy for elder sister to be hurt. Tisk, Yun Moyuan snorted. So what if she's not? Even if an ugly woman like her were to die on the streets, no one would care. Yun Ruoyan clenched her fists. Cousin, you're right. For someone like me, even if I were to die on the streets, no one would care. Sisters, you'd better head back soon. Yun Ruoyan's tone was a mixture of sarcasm, resentment, and sincerity. In her past life, she had indeed been forced to drink poison and died on the streets. At the time, only a nameless man had walked up to her. We're here to see you, sister. Why are you asking us to leave? Yun Ruoyao teased. Do you not welcome us? You really think too highly of yourself. Yun Moyuan rolled his eyes at Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan didn't know what she had done to offend him for him to hate her so much. Was it just because she was ugly and had no talent for cultivation? Yun Moyuan, don't go overboard. What can you do to me? Brother, sister. Calm down, don't start a fight. It was Yi Qianying's voice and she was still fanning the flames. Fight? She wouldn't dare. Yun Moyuan's veins bulged as he struck out with his palm. Yun Ruoyan's palm was so heavy that it struck Yun Ruoyan's shoulder and forced her back a few meters. Peony and Xilan wanted to help her up, but Yun Ruoyan stopped them. Don't interfere. She was the one who provoked him, so she'd deal with it herself. Yun Ruoyan held onto her shoulder and forced herself to stand up, her eyes blazing with anger. Yunmuyan, if you want to fight, I'll keep you company. She had already tolerated them repeatedly, and since they were still pushing her, there was no reason for her to retreat. The crowd hadn't expected the usually cowardly Yun Ruoyan to dare challenge Yunmuyan to a fight, and they instantly felt a little guilty. Yun Ruoyao calmed herself down and whispered, "Cousin, don't worry. She's not even a third-rank blade master, so she'll only be a punching bag." Only then did Yun Moyuan recall this fact, and he regained his confidence. He struck out 3 times in a row, each strike aimed at Yun Ruoyan's vitals. Although Yun Ruoyan wanted to resist, her cultivation was limited, and it was impossible for her to dodge. After a few blows, Yun Ruoyan was clearly at a disadvantage. With the last blow, Yun Ruoyan was forced back 3 feet, clutching her chest and coughing violently. All right. We can't continue." Peony rushed up. Xilan was also flustered. "Our mistress can't compare to the young master. If we continue, something bad will happen." "Who cares about servants like you?" Scram. Yun Ruoyu's temper flared once more, and she didn't even bother pretending. Yun Ruoyan knelt on the ground, a drop of blood dripping from her mouth onto the silver bracelet. Suddenly, the bracelet on her wrist glowed with a gentle light, and a steady stream of energy flowed into Yun Ruoyan's body. Yun Ruoyan couldn't explain the feeling, but she did feel much better. Chapter 9. Yun Moyuan didn't care that Peony and Xilan were shielding Yun Ruoyan. Circulating his internal energy, he sent a palm strike at Yun Ruoyan. What Yun Moyuan didn't expect was that, in that instant, a strong burst of internal energy blocked his palm strike. When he looked closely, he saw that Yun Ruoyan had somehow returned to protect the 2 maids, blocking Yun Moyuan's palm strike all by herself. Yun Moyuan was a 7th-rank blade master. How could a piece of trash like Yun Ruoyan possibly stand a chance against him? Yun Moyuan was a little overwhelmed by the force of the blow. Was this still the ugly Yun Ruoyan he knew? How could he possibly lose to a piece of trash? Yun Ruoyan was calm and composed, the energy in her body unending. With just a little more force, Yun Moyuan was already 3 feet away. Cough, cough. Yun Moyuan staggered a few steps before kneeling down and coughing violently. Yun Ruoyan, this is impossible. How could she have so easily counterattacked? Just a moment ago, he'd felt the immense strength emanating from Yun Ruoyan's palm. That wasn't the kind of energy someone of her age could control. Yun Ruoyan, how dare you plot against cousin? Yun Ruoyu's face was full of shock, thinking that Yun Ruoyan had used some underhanded trick. Otherwise, there was no way she could have defeated Yun Moyuan. As she spoke, Yun Ruoyu raised her sword and charged forward. But before she could even get within half a foot of Yun Ruoyan had already appeared behind her. With a light flick of her wrist, Yun Ruoyan circled around Yun Ruoyu's arm and easily snatched the sword from her hand. Yun Ruoyu wanted to snatch back her own weapon and strike Yun Ruoyan's injured shoulder, but Yun Ruoyan easily dodged her attack. In fact, she even suffered a heavy blow to her back. How could this be? How could she not be able to defeat the publicly acknowledged trash Yun Ruoyan? "Sister, you've caused enough trouble today, haven't you?" Yun Ruoyan raised her voice and threw her sword to the ground, making a crisp sound as it hit the cold ground. Yun Ruoyao and Yi Qianying had long since been dumbfounded by the sight. Yun Ruoyan's ghostly footwork and the immense amount of energy she had gathered in her palms were things that even they couldn't match. Yun Moyuan wanted to continue, but Yun Ruoyao quickly covered his mouth. "Sister, why are you so angry? This was just a joke between us, don't take it to heart." "Are you joking?" Yun Ruoyan laughed. "The lives of the 3 of us were almost in your hands." Yun Ruoyao bit her lip. Since when had this Yun Ruoyan become so difficult to deal with? Even her cultivation was above the 2 of them. How hateful. "It's getting late. We should have had enough of fooling around. Why don't we go back first?" Yi Qianying carefully walked up to Yun Ruoyan and tugged on her sleeve. "I wanted to apologize to you, sister, but I didn't expect to make you angry instead. It's all my fault." Yun Ruoyan had had enough of Yi Qianying's hypocrisy, and she calmly pulled away from her. "Sister, you're right. In that case, I won't be sending you off." Yi Qianying had taken the initiative to express her goodwill, but Yun Ruoyan didn't appreciate it. Who did this Yun Ruoyan think she was? She was usually so clingy, but now she was putting on airs. Finally, after inviting these troublesome characters away, Yun Ruoyan let out a sigh of relief and sat down to calm her breathing. Xilan couldn't hide her excitement. "Miss, you were so strong just now. Even young Master Moyuan wasn't a match for you." Peony also chimed in. "That's right, miss, but are your injuries all right? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Yun Ruoyan closed her eyes and quietly sensed the flow of energy within her body. She could clearly sense that this energy didn't belong to her, and that someone had lent it to her. She could even clearly feel that this energy came from her wrist, from the bracelet her mother had left her. Yun Ruoyan tried her best to control the flow of energy within her body, hoping to use this energy to heal her injuries. But to her surprise, as soon as she was able to control this energy, the energy that had permeated her body disappeared. She couldn't even find a trace of it. What was going on? Miss Peony asked in concern when she saw Yun Ruoyan frown. Xilan didn't seem to notice the change in Yun Ruoyan's expression. If this continues, you'll definitely be able to pass Kongming Academy's entrance exam in a few days. Kongming Academy's entrance exam? Yun Ruoyan caught these words. Kongming Academy was the strongest faction on the Xuanhuan continent, and its status was even higher than that of the Four Kingdoms. They would regularly recruit students from the various kingdoms, and all of them were eligible to participate. However, not everyone was able to enter Kongming Academy. If she could maintain her strength during her battle with Yun Moyuan and Yun Ruoyu, it wouldn't be difficult for her to enter Kongming Academy. The problem was that this energy had disappeared again, as if it had never existed in the first place. Yun Ruoyan opened her palm and looked at the carvings on it. She had to figure out what this energy was, and she had to enter Kongming Academy so that those who looked down on her would have nothing to say about it. Peony, Xilan, you two can leave first. I'm tired. Yun Ruoyan sent the two of them away. Only when Yun Ruoyan was alone in the room did she begin to study the bracelet on her wrist. The carvings on the bracelet were especially exquisite under the candlelight. Upon closer inspection, Yun Ruoyan realized that the bracelet was layered. The top and bottom layers were filled with paper clips, while the middle layer was the main body of the bracelet, and the carvings were even more intricate. She held the bracelet in her hand and turned it lightly. Yun Ruoyan's vision darkened. By the time she opened her eyes again, she was in an unknown space. Could this be the bracelet's internal space? Meep, mistress? A childish voice called out. But there was nothing around her, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find the source of the voice. Meep? Gradually, an orange fog appeared in front of Yun Ruoyan's eyes. As if it had a mind of its own, the fog began to gather in one spot. By the time Yun Ruoyan regained her senses, a Kirin-like creature with a horn on its head had appeared in front of her. The Kirin had barely reached Yun Ruoyan's knees, and its two large eyes were as bright as amber. It trotted over to Yun Ruoyan and rubbed its head against her leg. Mistress, I've been waiting for you for so long. Mistress? The little fellow was so adorable that Yun Ruoyan liked it as soon as she saw it. She bent down and stroked its head. What's your name? How long have you been here? Well, I don't have a name yet. The little fellow tilted its head and looked at Yun Ruoyan with its amber eyes. I've been here for more than 100 years. 100 years. Yun Ruoyan's first reaction was that this was an excellent spiritual beast. Chapter 10. Spiritual beasts were incredibly rare on the Xuanhuan continent, and some people wouldn't even be able to find a single one in their entire lives. Who would have thought that such a cute spiritual beast would reside within this bracelet? In that case, why don't I call you Xiaoqiu? Yun Ruoyan smiled. Do you like that name? Xiaoqiu. I like it. Xiaoqiu's eyes lit up, and it leaped onto Yun Ruoyan's body. Perhaps because Xiaoqiu's impact was too great, Yun Ruoyan almost fell to the ground, and her shoulder, which had been injured by Yun Moyuan, began to hurt even more. Seeing Yun Ruoyan's pained expression, Xiaoqiu hurriedly let go of her, its large eyes filled with worry. Mistress, are you hurt? It's just a small injury, I'm fine. Yun Ruoyan forced a smile. Xiaoqiu circled around Yun Ruoyan a few times, its frown making it look even more adorable. Mistress, you've been poisoned as well. Yun Ruoyan hadn't expected that this seemingly adorable spiritual beast would have such a venomous gaze. Xiaoqiu, do you have a cure? Xiaoqiu doesn't know how to detoxify poisons. Xiaoqiu shook its head, then smiled. But this place is extremely conducive to the recovery of spiritual energy and cultivation. Mistress, if you rest here for a while, your cultivation will definitely increase. Yun Ruoyan pondered for a moment. Xiaoqiu was right. As soon as she had entered this pocket dimension, she had felt a strong surge of energy. If she were to cultivate here, her cultivation might really increase. Mistress, hurry up and try. Xiaoqiu tugged on the corner of Yun Ruoyan's robe, forcing her to sit down. All right. Yun Ruoyan immediately began to circulate her energy. Indeed, she could feel the energy surging through her body. This short moment of rest was more beneficial than 10 days of cultivation in the outside world. If she persisted in cultivating in the pocket dimension, entering Kongming Academy wouldn't be a problem at all. Over the next few days, Xuanhuan sent Peony and Xilan to tidy up the courtyard, locked herself in her room, and began cultivating under Qiuqiu's tutelage. Fortunately, Xuanhuan had already sent away those who were far away to prevent rumors from spreading. Although Peony and Xilan had their suspicions, they didn't ask any questions, thinking that Xuanhuan was focused on her recovery. While Xuanhuan was resting, Qiuqiu lay on her lap. Mistress, although it's easier to cultivate here if you don't get rid of the poison, there will still be some limitations. I know. Xuanhuan stroked Qiuqiu's fur. All this time she had been worried. Although Peony and Xilan were watching over him, making it difficult for Madame to poison him again, there was still far too much poison left in his body, and his grandfather still hadn't found a way to neutralize it. She was worried that the energy in this space would cause the poison to act up. But now she couldn't afford to think too much about it. It was almost time for Kongming Academy's recruitment drive. She'd already missed it in her last life, and she couldn't afford to make the same mistake in this one. Entering Kongming Academy was a crucial step in changing her fate. She had to give it her all. Finally, it was the day of Kongming Academy's recruitment, and the royal families of the various kingdoms were already preparing for the first round of selection. Similarly, any child between the ages of 6 to 15 could participate, and the misses of both the Yun and Lin families were on the list of candidates. As soon as the news of Kongming Academy's recruitment drive spread, the Yun family's children began to speed up their cultivation. Only Xuanhuan's cottage remained quiet. Xilan was the first to speak up. Mistress, the misses from the other courtyards have already begun their preparations, and Master and Madam are in the Great Hall discussing the selection. Why haven't we been invited? Master, could it be that you've forgotten about us? Xuanhuan calmly replied, Don't worry, someone will come to invite us. As soon as Xuanhuan finished speaking, Wet Nurse Chen's voice came from outside. Miss Ruoyan, Master and Madam are inviting you over. Xilan exclaimed, Ah, Miss, you're amazing. How could Xuanhuan forget what she'd experienced in her last life? Xuanhuan smiled. Let's go. Just as Peony was about to follow Xuanhuan out, Xilan stopped her and scratched her head. Sister Peony, what's wrong with Miss Ruoyan? I don't see you crying or laughing. Xilan is getting more and more confused. Peony patted Xilan's head. I don't understand either. But don't worry, Miss Ruoyan is slowly getting better. Xilan didn't quite understand her words, but she could only nod. As soon as Xuanhuan sat down in the Great Hall, Madame glanced at her and teased, Look at our Ruoyan, you always have to be invited over. Now that you've grown up, you've finally learned how to act like a spoiled young miss. I wouldn't dare. It's just that I don't usually participate in the fun affairs of my sisters, so I only hear about them a little late. Xuanhuan was neither servile nor overbearing. Madame turned to Yunlan. Jenning's right. Since all the Yun sisters are participating in the selection, there's no reason for me not to go. Even if I'm not particularly talented, I still have to try. Otherwise, outsiders will think that the Yun family is biased. Master, please accept my invitation. No one noticed the cold smile on Xuanhuan's face. Even if a useless piece of trash like her were to participate in the selection, she would only become a laughingstock. Yunlan naturally didn't want the Yun family to lose face. If not for Yi Qianying and Madame Anne's urging, Yunlan would have long since announced that his eldest daughter, Xuanhuan, was ill. The reason why Yi Qianying and Madame Anne had brought her up in front of Yunlan was simply to embarrass her once more. Yunlan sat in the Great Hall and glanced at Xuanhuan. Are you going to participate? It was the same question as in her past life, but the Xuanhuan of her past life had been timid and self-abased. She had repeatedly declined, which only made Yunlan even angrier and forced her to compete. The rift between father and daughter had only deepened, which was exactly what Madame N and Yi Qianying wanted. This time, however, Xuanhuan was fully confident that she would emerge victorious. Xuanhuan raised her head. I'm willing to participate and I won't disappoint you, father. Yunlan's eyes narrowed into slits. Xuanhuan, since you've said this, you'll have to keep your word. Xuanhuan knelt down. Father, please give me this opportunity and I'll do my best. Madame Anne clearly hadn't expected Xuanhuan to agree so readily. She subconsciously glanced at Yunruoyao and Yi Qianying, her eyes full of resentment. She had wanted to use this opportunity to stir up conflict between father and daughter, but Yunruoyan had actually agreed without a second thought. The first round of the competition will be announced in a few days. I'll have someone fill in your name, so go back and prepare. Yunlan took a sip of his tea. The first round of the competition was a one-on-one match. In her past life, Yun Ruoyan had lost to Lin Qingqian in the first round, which was one of the reasons for the enmity between her and the Lin family. Although Yun Ruoyan wanted to enter Kongming Academy, she didn't want to be separated from the Lin sisters. The best solution was for her not to fight against the Lin sisters. She had to change everything before the name list was finalized. Yun Ruoyan took a few beads from her own belongings and headed to the residence of the envoy. Actually, Yun Ruoyan wasn't exactly poor. Although she had never received a share of her family's allowance, just the box of jewelry her mother had left her was worth more than 1,000 taels of gold. When Yun Ruoyan arrived at the residence, she bumped into Yun Ruoyao, who was also carrying a box of silver. Yun Ruoyan quickly hid by the wall. Yun Ruoyao was extremely talented, and Yun Ruoyan couldn't think of any reason why Yun Ruoyao would need an envoy from Kongming Academy. Yun Ruoyao entered the residence for a full 15 minutes. Only when she came out did Yun Ruoyan sneak in. "Envoy Ding, please wait." Envoy Ding stopped in his tracks. "You are?" "I'm Yun Ruoyan and I have something to discuss with you." Yun Ruoyan bowed. The envoy looked at her and hurriedly closed the door. "Let's talk about it later." "Envoy." Yun Ruoyan took out the luminous pearl in her hand and placed it in front of Envoy Ding's eyes. "I have something urgent to discuss." Envoy Ding's eyes widened. Anyone with a discerning eye would know that this was a luminous pearl unique to the southern seas. Just one of it was worth 3 times the amount of silver Yun Ruoyao had brought. "Miss Yun, let's talk inside." Envoy Ding opened the door and invited Yun Ruoyan in. "Envoy Ding, have you prepared the list of matches between the various families?" Yun Ruoyan asked. "Miss, do you have any requests?" Envoy Ding smiled. Yun Ruoyan liked talking to smart people, so she directly stated her intentions. "It's not difficult as long as I don't have to compete with the 2 misses of the Lin family." Envoy Ding smiled craftily. "Miss, you're really smart." "What do you mean?" Yun Ruoyan asked. "Just now, your concubine-born sister came over precisely to change your opponent to the Lin sisters." Envoy Ding smiled. "I haven't even said anything, but you've already guessed second Miss Yun's intentions." This was something Yun Ruoyan hadn't expected. She had originally thought that she would be matched against Lin Qingqian, which was why she had been so anxious to change her opponent. She hadn't expected that she would be matched against Lin Qingqian because of Yun Ruoyao. Well done, Yun Ruoyao. If she didn't get her revenge, how could she possibly take this lying down? "Envoy Ding, my concubine-born sister only wants me to lose. Just arrange an extremely talented opponent for me," Yun Ruoyan smiled. Yun Ruoyan smiled as she generously took out another luminous pearl from her robes. "Yun Ruoyao, you're a good opponent." Envoy Ding accepted the luminous pearl and looked suspiciously at Yun Ruoyan's departing figure. Everyone said that Yun Ruoyan was ugly, cowardly, and stupid. Why was it that the Yun Ruoyan he saw today was different from the rumors he'd heard? Indeed, rumors couldn't be trusted. Envoy Ding shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He crossed out Li Mo's name and replaced it with Yun Ruoyao. Chapter 11. In the blink of an eye, the day of the preliminaries had arrived, and the arena was filled with the families and spectators of the contestants. After the first round, Envoy Ding walked to the center of the arena with a list in his hand and announced in a loud voice, "Next, the eldest daughter of the Yun family, Yun Ruoyan." When Yun Ruoyan's name was called out, the crowd gasped in surprise, and the sounds of discussion grew louder. "Did I hear that right? Yun Ruoyan? That trash from the Yun family who's not even a third-rank blade master? How's that possible? Isn't she courting death? That's right. What a disgrace. She's here to compete? How could Kongming Academy accept her?" Yun Ruoyan heard all the doubtful voices. She forced herself to stand tall and walk through the crowd, step by step onto the stage. Today Yun Ruoyan was dressed in red, and compared to her usual elegant and tranquil self, she was even more seductive and beautiful. Her lips were red and her eyes were bright and clear. She was graceful and charming, and she exuded an innate sense of pride. If not for the scarlet birthmark on her cheek, no one would have believed that this was the Yun family's Yun Ruoyan, whose words were as quiet as a mosquito's buzz. The crowd began to whisper among themselves once more, but the topic of their discussion was the girl in red's extraordinary aura. Yun Ruoyao, who sat below the stage, heard all the exclamations even more vividly. Of the 3 daughters of the Yun family, Ruoyan was useless, and Ruoyu was unreasonable. Clearly she was the only daughter of the Yun family who could stand out. Since when was it Yun Ruoyan's turn to be in the limelight? Yun Ruoyao stared at Yun Ruoyan, a dangerous glint in her eyes. Yun Ruoyan wouldn't be able to bask in the limelight for much longer. As soon as the match began, Yun Ruoyan would be beaten back to her original state. After all, she had chosen Lin Qingchen, who had been gifted since she was a child. She didn't believe that after this match Yun Ruoyan would be at odds with the Lins. Silence. Envoy Ding cleared his throat and continued, the opponent is the second daughter of the Yun family, Yun Ruoyao. Yun Ruoyao, who suddenly heard her name, jumped up from her seat with a bang. Her eyes widened. What was going on? Emissary Ding had clearly lowered her volume and changed the name list. Sister, you scared me. Yun Ruoyu patted her chest. Ruoyao, what are you doing? Madame frowned. Yun Ruoyao had never lost her composure in public before. Yun Ruoyao quickly calmed herself down and walked toward the arena. Both of them took out their respective swords and the match officially began. Sister, I think you should give up as soon as possible. You can't beat me, Yun Ruoyao said. Whether I can win or not, we'll only know after we fight. Yun Ruoyan smiled. A cornered beast struggle is meaningless. Yun Ruoyan didn't get angry. Are you afraid? Scared. Why would she, Yun Ruoyao, be afraid of a piece of trash? This Yun Ruoyan was getting more and more overconfident. I'm afraid I'll injure you until you're crippled. Yun Ruoyao raised her internal energy and flew in front of Yun Ruoyan. The sharp blade brushed past Yun Ruoyan's nose, and the arena was filled with sword light. The dazzling white sword light wove into a net that locked the two of them in place. Yun Ruoyan's bright red figure spun on the stage like an enchanting fiery butterfly, and her sharp swordplay didn't lose out to Yun Ruoyao's in the slightest. One was publicly acknowledged as a cripple, while the other was publicly acknowledged as a talented woman. No one could have imagined that one day the two of them would be able to compete on the same stage. In fact, it would be an evenly matched match. My goodness, when did Sister Ruoyan become so strong? It was Yun Ruoyu's voice. Xianxia watched from the side, feeling a little uneasy. These days Yun Ruoyan had brought her far too many surprises. Many of them had exceeded Xianxia's expectations. Madame frowned as she stared at the arena, unable to believe her eyes. She had thought that Yun Ruoyao would be able to defeat Yun Ruoyan within 3 moves, but the two of them had already exchanged more than 10 blows, and Yun Ruoyan still hadn't lost. In fact, Yun Ruoyan was slowly gaining the upper hand. Impossible, how could this be? Yun Ruoyan's cultivation had clearly been suppressed by medicine, and no one had taught her swordsmanship. How could she possibly compare to Yun Ruoyao, who had been taught swordsmanship since she was 5? Even amongst the daughters of the aristocratic families, Yun Ruoyao's swordsmanship and cultivation were the cream of the crop. At this moment Yun Ruoyao's shock was no less than that of the spectators. Seeing that her attack had been easily blocked by Yun Ruoyan, Yun Ruoyao was even more flabbergasted. Yun Ruoyan, you. That's impossible. Sister, I haven't used my full strength yet, Yun Ruoyan replied casually. Nonsense. Yun Ruoyao refused to admit it. She was publicly acknowledged as a talented woman, and a cripple like Yun Ruoyan couldn't possibly be stronger than her. What did she mean by not using her full strength? That was even more impossible. But why was it that even though she had expended so much effort to block Yun Ruoyan's attacks, to the point where even her movements were a little disordered, Yun Ruoyan was still as calm as ever? Wasn't she tired? Yun Ruoyan was no longer in the mood to continue fighting with Yun Ruoyao. With a sharp gaze, she stabbed her sword toward Yun Ruoyao's abdomen. Yun Ruoyao hurriedly retracted her sword to protect her abdomen, then took small steps back. But in that instant, the red figure in front of her suddenly disappeared. The next second Yun Ruoyao's waist suffered a heavy blow, and her feet slipped as she fell forward. Yun Ruoyao's mind was blank. In that instant, even the clamor around her had fallen silent. Because on the stage Yun Ruoyao had fallen heavily to the ground, and Yun Ruoyan had appeared behind her. She took a step forward and lightly pressed her sword against Yun Ruoyao's neck. Yun Ruoyao had lost. And she had lost to the cripple Yun Ruoyan. Everyone present stared with their eyes wide open and mouths agape, a look of disbelief on their faces. The referee and Envoy Ding were even more so. That was until the crowd erupted in cheers. Yun Ruoyan wins. Envoy Ding finally returned to his senses and announced the result, giving Yun Ruoyan a look of approval. Indeed, rumors couldn't be trusted. What cripple? This Yun Ruoyan was clearly a cultivation genius. This was what Envoy Ding thought. Amidst the clamor of the crowd, Madame slammed her fist against her armchair, stood up and left, not even willing to watch the rest of the duel. Similarly, Yun Ruoyao wasn't in tune with the cheering crowd. She hadn't even seen how Yun Ruoyan had struck, and she had been inexplicably defeated. She had even fallen flat on her face, becoming the laughingstock of the entire Li kingdom. How could she possibly be satisfied with this? Yun Ruoyao gritted her teeth as she watched Yun Ruoyan walk off the stage under the admiring gazes of the crowd. How hateful. The object of everyone's cheers, the glory of a talented woman, should have belonged to her. She should have been the object of everyone's admiration and admiration. But now all of this had been snatched away by Yun Ruoyan. It was all Yun Ruoyan's fault. It was all that slut's fault. Chapter 12. After the duel, Yun Ruoyan made a trip to the Lin household to inform them of the news and inquire about the progress of the antidote before returning to her rooms to rest. After all, the poison in her body hadn't been completely purged, and Yun Ruoyan's body was so tired that she quickly fell into a deep sleep. By the time she was woken up, the moon was already high in the sky. "Miss, the old madam is calling for you again," Peony said as she helped Yun Ruoyan change into her shoes. Yun Ruoyan looked at the sky. It was already so late, and the old madam had to be calling for her for something urgent. Did grandmother call for anyone else? Yes. Peony nodded worriedly. The third miss and Missy will be there as well. I'm afraid it's because of your victory over the second miss today. Yun Ruoyan rubbed her forehead. That's true. What else could it be? Her sisters in the Yun household were truly troublesome, and she couldn't even get a good night's rest. What they didn't know was that even though they were united against a common enemy, they would still be played by an outsider like Xianxia. Yun Ruoyan tidied up a little, had Peony light the lamps and walked into the great hall. Yun Ruoyu and Xianxia were already waiting there. When the old madam saw her enter, she put down her teacup and asked, I heard that you defeated Ruoyao in the duel today? Yes, grandmother, Yun Ruoyan replied frankly. Some people suspect that you won the duel because you plotted against Ruoyao. The old madam's tone was indifferent, and it was hard to tell which side she was leaning towards. Do you have anything to say? Yun Ruoyan smiled and bowed. Grandmother, many people were watching during the duel. If you really had used some underhanded trick, all the judges would have been able to tell. Why would they have declared you the winner? Yun Ruoyan's words were logical, and the old madam nodded. The referees of Kongming Academy were renowned for their sharp eyes. Even the tiniest of tricks couldn't escape their eyes. It was for this reason that the judges had been so shocked when they saw Yun Ruoyan defeat Yun Ruoyao. Yun Ruoyu interjected, Do you mean to say that you won with your own strength? That's right. Yun Ruoyan's conscience was clear. Sister, Xianxia finally spoke up. If you really wanted to go to Kongming Academy, you could have just told us. Why did you have to do this behind our backs? What's more, this elimination system is also to prevent people like you who are not talented from encountering danger in the later stages of the test. Alright, Xianxia had helped her settle the crime of cheating first. Exactly. Everyone knows that you're not even a third-rank blade master. Yun Ruoyu rolled her eyes. Second sister, on the other hand, had a master accompanying her since she was 5. Even Xianxia and I weren't her match, so how could she possibly lose to you? Don't tell me you think your cultivation is better than the rest of us. Yun Ruoyan quietly waited for Yun Ruoyu to speak, her eyes calm and unperturbed. If it were any other time, Yun Ruoyan would have already humbly and timidly said, I wouldn't dare, but at this moment Yun Ruoyan only looked at Yun Ruoyu quietly, until even Yun Ruoyu felt a little guilty. Yes. Yun Ruoyan's clear voice rang out. My cultivation has always been above yours. Such confidence. If those who hadn't seen Yun Ruoyan defeat Yun Ruoyao heard this, they would surely think that Yun Ruoyan was boasting. How could a piece of trash say that her cultivation was above theirs? What a joke. But for Yun Ruoyu and Xianxia, who had witnessed the battle with their own eyes, these words only made them feel guilty. Had Yun Ruoyan really not cheated? Had she really defeated Yun Ruoyao with her own strength? But that was impossible. Ruoyu, you haven't forgotten how I defeated you that day, have you? Yun Ruoyan smiled at Yun Ruoyu. Yun Ruoyu panicked. Being defeated by a piece of trash was truly humiliating. Now that Yun Ruoyan had brought this matter up in front of the old madam, how could she face the old madam in the future? After all, the person who had defeated her was a piece of trash. But what Yun Ruoyan had said was the truth. Moreover, she had only thought that Yun Ruoyan had been anxious that day, which was why she had exploded with such strength at the most critical moment. But from Yun Ruoyan's words, could it be that her defeat that day wasn't a coincidence? Yun Ruoyu gritted her teeth, unwilling to admit her defeat. That was a coincidence. You were just lucky. I lost to you because I wasn't paying attention. Then according to what you're saying, Yun Moyuan also lost to me because he wasn't paying attention? Yun Ruoyan countered. Yun Ruoyu wanted to argue further, but the old madam interrupted. What did you just say? Moyuan lost to you? Yes, Yun Ruoyan replied with a smile. The old madam looked at Yun Ruoyan's demeanor, which was neither servile nor overbearing, and a trace of a smile appeared on her lips. This granddaughter of hers was no longer the same as before. What a pity! The old madam's gaze landed on the birthmark on Yun Ruoyan's face. What a pity that her appearance, sighed. Sensing the old madam's gaze, Yun Ruoyan immediately felt the scarlet birthmark on her face heat up. She knew that she wasn't beautiful, and she had already tried her best to forget about the birthmark. But every time she thought about it, she still felt a little inferior, as if she had returned to her timid self. She didn't like this feeling and she hurriedly averted her gaze. Third sister, if you don't believe in my abilities, why don't we have a rematch in front of the old madam? Yun Ruoyu started. Another rematch? In front of the old madam? Wouldn't that embarrass her once more? She wouldn't want to. My cultivation isn't comparable to Qianying's, so you'd better compete with her. Yun Ruoyan smiled as her gaze landed on Qianying. Qianying also took a step back, a bitter smile on her face. Sister, you really like to joke. If you've won, then you've won. Why do you have to compete with me now? She made it sound as if Yun Ruoyan really wanted to show off in front of everyone. Ignoring her, Yun Ruoyan continued, if you're really unconvinced, why don't we have a rematch another day? Why do you have to resort to such underhanded tactics? The old madam nodded, her praise and appreciation for Yun Ruoyan growing. After all, Yun Ruoyan was the only daughter of the Yun family's wife-born wife, and she was also the descendant of a family of divine physicians. But for so long, because of Yun Ruoyan's timid personality and lack of talent, the Yun matriarch had lamented her misfortune and was even angrier at her lack of ambition. She had almost given up on her. Fortunately, Yun Ruoyan had finally improved. It's getting late and you've caused quite a ruckus. Let's all disperse. The old madam cleared her throat before turning to Yun Ruoyu and Qianying. The two of you try to comfort Ruoyao as well. If she wants to enter Kongming Academy, she'll naturally have a chance. Yes. Chapter 13. Yun Ruoyan walked out of the Great Hall, feeling even more exhausted than before. Although the old madam hadn't listened to Yun Ruoyu and Qianying, she hadn't punished them either. It was clear that the old madam still didn't fully trust her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have summoned her so late at night. Yun Ruoyan walked leisurely, sighing as she gazed at the silver moon obscured by the endless dark clouds. Even the Yun sisters were doubtful, let alone the other young misses. After all, it was much easier to acknowledge the existence of a piece of trash than a powerful opponent who had suddenly appeared. There were still 2 more matches to go, and she had to adjust her mental state and rest well. Just then a clear male voice rang out from above Yun Ruoyan's head. Isn't this Yun Ruoyan, the one who defeated the talented daughter of the Yun family today? Why are you sighing instead? Yun Ruoyan looked in the direction of the voice. A black-robed man was hanging upside down from a beam, smiling at her. Who are you? How did you get in? That person looked to be about 15 or 16 years old. He landed on the ground and opened a gold fan. It doesn't matter who I am. I just wanted to see the person who made a name for himself in the Academy's recruitment today. Yun Ruoyan couldn't be bothered with him. She turned and walked back. I'm not in the mood to entertain you, young master. If you don't leave, I'll call for help. The man hurriedly chased after her. It's useless even if you call for help. They won't be able to catch me. Yun Ruoyan glanced at him and smiled. Young master, are you confident in your martial arts? Don't be so serious, the man smiled and put away his fan. Why don't you tell me how you suddenly gained such a high level of cultivation? Did you cultivate some kind of peerless technique? Yun Ruoyan was truly exhausted, and all she wanted to do was return to her rooms to rest. It's late, young master. If you still don't return, I'll have to do it myself. Yun Ruoyan's words made the man anxious. Don't. I don't have any ill intentions. I just want to be friends with you. You must be in a good mood to be friends with me, young master. Yun Ruoyan didn't bother with pleasantries. The man was too embarrassed to follow her. He could only stand there and watch as Yun Ruoyan walked away. He scratched his head with his folding fan. I seem to have messed things up again. Third Prince, are we going back now? In the darkness, a figure suddenly appeared beside the man. Let's go. There's no point. Li Qianhuan scratched his head. I don't know why Uncle cares so much about him. After a night's rest, Xuanhuan felt much better than before. As she ate the white fungus soup that Peony had personally prepared, she looked at her upcoming match schedule. It would have been fine if he didn't look, but when he did, he almost spat out the delicious tremella soup. Xuanxia. This name had been a shadow in Xuanhuan's childhood. When she was 10, this person had stayed with the Yun family for a month, and was about the same age as Xuanhuan. Ever since she had arrived, Xuanhuan had been mocked by her for being ugly every single day. Ever since that short stay, Xuanxia had been on good terms with Xuanhuan. Xuanxia must have known that she had eliminated Xuanhuan yesterday. Who knew how this person was going to insult him on the martial arts stage? Xuanhuan stroked the birthmark on her cheek. No matter what, she was definitely going to enter Kongming Academy. If she couldn't win against Xuanxia in an argument, then she would defeat her on the arena. Soon it was time for the second match. Xuanhuan had changed into an elegant moon-white dress, and she walked onto the arena like a fairy. Opposite her, Xuanxia was clearly taken aback. During the first match, she had been shocked when she saw Xuanhuan dressed in red. That day, Xuanhuan's aura and demeanor had been completely different from the Xuanhuan she remembered. Xuanxia had thought that no matter how dazzling she dressed, she wouldn't be able to match Xuanhuan's attire. She hadn't expected that the ugly girl she knew would one day be so pleasing to the eye. Even the red birthmark on her cheek seemed to have a special charm to it. What was going on? Xuanxia massaged her temples, forcing herself to think rationally. This was Xuanhuan. Cowardly, ugly and useless. No matter how many times she changed her clothes, it wouldn't change her true nature. Xuanxia was the first to unsheath her sword. Each strike was lethal, but Xuanhuan easily dodged it. Tiske, an ugly sparrow wants to become a phoenix? Xuanxia mocked Xuanhuan as soon as she dodged her attack. Xuanhuan's eyes narrowed, hiding the dangerous glint in her eyes. Xuanxia wanted to speak again, but she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her wrist, and her sword slipped out of her hand. Then she felt a vicious kick to her knee, causing her to lose her balance and kneel on the arena. A phoenix will always be a phoenix, and there's no need for it to change. Xuanhuan's sword rested on Xuanxia's neck. A lowly status will never change, just as a concubine-born daughter will always be a concubine-born daughter. These words were meant not only for Xuanhuan, but also for Xuanxia. After all, it was precisely because Xuanxia's mother had been ostracized by the matriarch of the Li family that Master Li had no choice but to allow Xuanxia to stay at the Yun Manor. After Envoy Ding announced the results of the match, Xuanhuan left, leaving Xuanxia to grit her teeth on the arena. In the third match, Xuanhuan was up against Yi Qianying. Xuanhuan glanced at the matchups, her eyes calm. Peony thought that Xuanhuan didn't think much of it. After all, Yunruoyao, Yunmoyuan, Xuanxia, and Yunruoyu had all been defeated by Xuanhuan, let alone Yi Qianying. In reality, however, Xuanhuan was the only one who knew how excited she was. This arrangement was really wonderful. She was just worrying about where to start her revenge, and the heavens gave her such an opportunity. Entering Kongming Academy was like a springboard into the turbulent times of the Qinyuan continent. Those who succeeded would have a smooth sailing life, while those who failed would be as lowly as grass, just like Yunruoyan in her past life. Since the heavens had given her this opportunity, she would personally sever Yi Qianying's future. On the day of the match, everything went as smoothly as Yunruoyan had expected. Yi Qianying stared at the sharp blade that was only a few millimeters away from her, her eyes filled with panic. She calmed herself down and forced a smile. "Sister, you've won." Yunruoyan's face was expressionless, but her eyes shone with indistinct anger. Only the heavens knew how much self-control she had to keep herself from killing her. "Sister? What's the matter?" Yi Qianying's face was full of worry. If not for the fact that she knew Yi Qianying's character, Yunruoyan would have long since been fooled by her innocent appearance. "I'm fine." With a twist of her wrist, Yunruoyan sheathed her sword. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, her anger was gone, replaced by a calm expression. Chapter 14. After the 3 rounds, the chosen candidates would enter the imperial territory, and only those who successfully emerged from the territory would have the right to enter Kongming Academy. Once Lin Qingqian had defeated her opponent, the selection for Kongming Academy would finally come to an end. Yunruoyan, who had been waiting by the side, walked up and returned to the Lin Manor with her 2 cousins. Lin Zainan was still in his pill-making chambers, trying to figure out a way to decipher Yunruoyan's poison. Only when his 2 granddaughters ran in to call him did he slowly walk out of his chambers. Yunruoyan walked up to him and helped him up. "Grandfather, you've been worrying too much about me. No matter what, you're still a child of the Lin family, and I'm taking care of you on your mother's behalf. Lin Zainan laughed. In that case, would you like to have a meal with me today? Yun Ruoyan smiled. A meal? Lin Zainan glanced at Yun Ruoyan with interest. I'm afraid it's not that simple, is it? Yun Ruoyan stuck out her tongue. I really can't hide it from you, grandfather. There's something I'd like to tell my sisters about. Oh. What's the matter, sister? Can't you tell me on the way back? It was Lin Qingshue's voice. Yun Ruoyan poked Lin Qingshue's nose. That's a secret, so of course I can't tell you. Compared to the Yun household, the Lin household was much more deserted. Although it was famous, it couldn't withstand the desolation of its descendants. Once night fell, Yun Ruoyan could only hear the sounds of a few servants cleaning the courtyard, but she liked the quiet atmosphere. Compared to the Yun household, which was filled with incessant scheming, this place was far more comfortable. Although the Lin household was small, the food was prepared to the fullest. Before long, Yun Ruoyan's table was filled with dishes. After the four of them finished eating, they returned to the pavilion to discuss the day's official business. Soon we'll be entering the imperial territory, and I have a few things I'd like to tell my sisters. Yun Ruoyan took a sip of her tea. Things to watch out for? Lin Qingxue rested her chin on her hands, a puzzled expression on her face. Sister, you've been to the imperial territory before? How do you know what to watch out for? Lin Zainan and Lin Qingchen also looked at Yun Ruoyan, clearly having the same question as Lin Qingxue. The imperial territory was heavily guarded, and under normal circumstances, not even the scions of the great clans were allowed to approach. It could be said that it was the most mysterious place on the Xuanhuan continent. They were truly curious as to how Yun Ruoyan had known what they needed to pay attention to. Yun Ruoyan rubbed Lin Qingshue's head and explained, "A few days ago, I happened to save a woman. Her son happened to be one of the guards of the imperial territory, and he told me a few things about it." Is this information reliable? Could it be a trap? Lin Zainan asked. I've already investigated the woman and her son, and there's nothing wrong with them. Grandfather, don't worry, the news is reliable. Lin Zainan thought for a moment, then nodded. Seeing that Lin Zainan had let down his guard, Yun Ruoyan quickly took another sip of tea. Actually, Yun Ruoyan was just making things up when she called him a housewife and a guard's son. The only reason she knew what to look out for in the imperial territory was because she had been there before. In her past life, she hadn't had the chance to enter Kongming Academy, but because Pei Zio's father had been in charge of arranging the territory, Pei Zio had once brought Yun Ruoyan in and explained to her the various traps and mechanisms, as well as what she couldn't touch or take. That was why Yun Ruoyan knew so much about the imperial territory. Although she couldn't guarantee that she'd memorized everything Pei Zio had told her at the time, every little bit she knew was good enough. She was more than happy to share what she knew with her two sisters, and she didn't want them to be hurt in the slightest. Within the territory there are many traps and mechanisms. Yun Ruoyan's lecture went on for more than an hour. Given that her two sisters were so eager to learn and ask questions, by the time Yun Ruoyan was ready to leave, it was already the middle of the night. Seeing that it was getting late, Lin Zainan hurried his two granddaughters back to their rooms to sleep before personally sending Yun Ruoyan off. When they finally reached the door, Lin Zainan asked, "Ruoyan, tell me the truth. How did you know all this?" Yun Ruoyan paused for a moment before smiling. As expected, I can't hide my thoughts from you, grandfather. Lin Zainan looked at her, waiting for her to continue. Yun Ruoyan continued, Grandfather, don't worry. Everything I've said is true and trustworthy. As for the source of this information, forgive me but I can't tell you. Lin Zainan stroked his beard. Of course I believe you, but what's wrong? Yun Ruoyan asked. Ruoyan, I just feel like I don't understand you at all. Lin Zainan looked at Yun Ruoyan meaningfully. You were so familiar with the imperial territory just now that you've been in there before, haven't you? Yun Ruoyan hesitated before answering honestly, yes. Lin Zainan nodded and arranged for two servants to escort Yun Ruoyan before returning to his room. Only when Lin Zainan's silhouette disappeared did Yun Ruoyan let out a long sigh of relief. Don't understand me? Sometimes even she didn't understand herself. She wasn't vicious, but she wasn't merciful either. She knew that the road ahead of her would be fraught with difficulties, and that the easiest way was to cure her poison and leave the Yun family as soon as possible. However, she was determined to face it head-on, determined to compete with Yi Qianying and Yun Ruoyao. Miss Yun. Miss Yun. A familiar voice interrupted Yun Ruoyan's thoughts. The familiar black-robed man appeared in front of Yun Ruoyan once more, causing the two servants to jump in fright. If Yun Ruoyan hadn't stopped them in time, the two servants would have long since charged forward to draw their swords. Haha, I've come to apologize for offending you last time, the man laughed. I looked around the Yun Manor and didn't see you, so I came to the Lin Manor to take a look. Sure enough, I ran into you. Yun Ruoyan was puzzled. You broke into the Yun Manor again? You weren't caught? They couldn't find me, the man said cheerfully as he stuffed a small bottle into Yun Ruoyan's hands. This is a high-grade pill, especially useful for recovering one's internal energy and cultivation. You can have it all. As soon as he finished speaking, the man disappeared once more. Yun Ruoyan frowned. She hadn't even said she was going to accept it. Yun Ruoyan poured out the pill in the bottle. Under the moonlight, she saw 5 small oily green pills in her hand. Yun Ruoyan recognized them immediately. They were life quintessence pills. When Yun Ruoyao had gone to the palace, the empress had bestowed one to her, and the entire Yun family had been excited for half a month. But this man had given her 5 pills at once. Yun Ruoyan hurriedly put them away. She had only met that man by chance, and he couldn't possibly accept such an expensive gift. She would return it to him the next time they met. Chapter 15. The next morning, before Yun Ruoyan had even woken up, she heard a commotion outside her door. Sister, you're not awake yet? Let's go out and play. Yun Ruoyan felt a headache coming on. Disturbing her sleep so early in the morning really affected her mood for the whole day. Peony, Xilan. Peony and Xilan rushed in when they heard their mistress's voice. Xilan grumbled, Miss, the two misses came early in the morning. I told them you were still sleeping, but they wouldn't listen. It's not your fault. Yun Ruoyan sat in front of the dressing mirror. Second sister is used to being arrogant. How could you stop her? As soon as he finished speaking, Yun Ruoyao and Yi Qianying also entered the room. Eldest sister, Qianying and I have come to congratulate you, Yun Ruoyao said with a smile. Sister, your cultivation is truly impressive. Even they wouldn't believe it if they said it out loud. She didn't think that either of her sisters who had been defeated by her would sincerely congratulate her. Yun Ruoyan didn't respond. Instead she asked, Sister, why are you here today? Yun Ruoyao was naturally displeased at being ignored, but she hid her emotions well. Qianying and I would like to invite you up the mountain to relax. Yun Ruoyan's hand paused and a pearl earring fell from her hand. Peony hurriedly helped Yun Ruoyan put it on. Go sightseeing in the mountains? In her past life, although Yun Ruoyan hadn't even been qualified to enter the imperial territory, she had still managed to do so. At that time she had been accidentally pushed into the cold pond by Yi Qianying and had almost lost her life. In order to save her, Pei Zio had been unconscious. In order to save Pei Zio, she had begged her maternal grandfather to give her the Lin family's heirloom pill, saving Pei Zio's life. In this life, were her good sisters going to use the same trick again? Seeing that Yun Ruoyao didn't respond for a long time, Yun Ruoyao thought that she was hesitating, so she added, The young master of the Pei family will be going as well. Yun Ruoyan sneered. In the past, she really didn't know how to hide her emotions. Even the people she liked were so obvious. Usually, as long as someone mentioned Pei Zio's name, she would obediently take the bait. Now that he thought about it, he was really stupid at that time. Yun Ruoyan smiled. All right then, let's go together. Yun Ruoyao and Yi Qianying looked at each other and laughed even harder. When the three of them reached the top of the mountain, Pei Zio was already waiting there. He took the initiative to run up to Yun Ruoyan. Ruoyan, long time no see. How have you been? Not bad, thank you, Yun Ruoyan replied politely. This attitude clearly made Pei Zio a little uncomfortable. After all, Yun Ruoyan used to stick to him the most in the past. Ruoyan, are you not feeling well today? No, perhaps I walked too much. Yun Ruoyan didn't even look at him. She was worried that if she saw that familiar face again, she would not be able to resist committing a murder. Then let's take a break in the front. By this time, Yun Ruoyao and Yi Qianying had already run ahead of them. After saying something to each other, they turned around and waved at the two of them. Come quickly. Look, the water here is so clear. Not far from them, Yun Ruoyan felt a chill in her heart as she looked at their gentle smiles. These two people were also her younger sisters, but they wished for her to die. Yet, they were laughing and asking about her well-being while stabbing her in the back. Ruoyan, let's go together. Pei Zio grabbed Yun Ruoyan's hand and jogged over. Yun Ruoyan, on the other hand, was stunned. Then, without a trace, she pulled her hand back. In her past life, she had been pushed into the lake by Yi Qianying, and Pei Zio had jumped in to save her. But after the two of them had been rescued, she had quickly recovered, while Pei Zio had remained unconscious. In order to save Pei Zio, she had not hesitated to quarrel with her grandfather. She was curious. What if she hadn't tried to save him or beg for his help? What would have happened to Pei Zio then? Xuanhuan pinched her silver bracelet. Step by step, she walked to the edge of the lake, deliberately giving Yun Ruoyao and Yi Qianying a chance to strike. As expected, a force pushed against Yun Ruoyan's waist. At the same time she heard a voice say, "Ruoyan, be careful." Then there was a splash, the sound of Pei Zio falling into the lake. Yun Ruoyan had originally planned to enter the pocket dimension of the bracelet as soon as she entered the lake, but this time she discovered a strange light at the bottom of the lake. In her past life she had been pushed into the lake and choked on a few mouthfuls of water. She had been so focused on getting out of the lake that she hadn't noticed anything strange about the lake. Yun Ruoyan wasn't in a hurry to get out. She didn't want to ruin her sister's dreams so soon. Relying on her swimming skills, Yun Ruoyan swam toward the source of the light. When Yun Ruoyan reached it, she discovered that it was a box. From its appearance, it looked as if it had been there for many days, for its surface was covered with a thin layer of seaweed. That was where the strange, weak light had come from. Yun Ruoyan stretched out her hand, wanting to fish the box out of the water. Suddenly, a large black fish rushed out from the side, glaring at Yun Ruoyan. That thing didn't look like a fish either. It had no scales on its body, but a horn grew from its forehead. In comparison, it looked more like a mythical beast. Startled, Yun Ruoyan hurriedly covered her mouth. The strange fish circled around the box a few times, its gaze lingering on Yun Ruoyan's bracelet. After circling a few more times, it swam back to the box and used the horn on its head to knock against the box a few times. With great difficulty, it finally managed to open the box. There was a divine weapon lying inside. Yun Ruoyan was astonished. She had seen this weapon in the armory left behind by the Yun family. This was the legendary Feilai blade, and it had always been guarded by the mythical beast Jiao Lian. Who would have thought that a mystical weapon would be sleeping at the bottom of the lake? Jiao Lian circled around Yun Ruoyan a few more times before leaving. Yun Ruoyan's breath-holding technique couldn't be used for too long, and it was about time. Seeing that Jiao Lian had left, she retrieved the Feilai blade and prepared to get out of the lake. On the other side, Pei Zio was still struggling in the water. Yun Ruoyao and Yi Qianying were clearly panicking, and they hurriedly called for help. Yun Ruoyan temporarily stored the Feilai blade in the pocket dimension of the silver bracelet, then hurriedly swam in Pei Zio's direction. Ahem. Ruoyan. Pei Zio choked on a few mouthfuls of water and he couldn't even open his eyes. To be honest, seeing Pei Zio in this state, Yun Ruoyan was extremely touched for a moment. But it was only for a moment. Compared to the pain that Pei Zio had inflicted on her, and the hatred that he had personally poisoned her to death, that little bit of emotion wasn't even worth mentioning. Yun Ruoyan stepped forward, grabbed Pei Zio's waist, and slowly dragged him to the shore. Ruoyan, are you alright? After saying this, Pei Zio fainted. By this time the lake was already filled with people. Yun Ruoyao and Yi Qianying stared dumbfounded at Yun Ruoyan's unharmed return to the shore. Now that there were so many people around, it was even more difficult for them to make a move. Moreover, Pei Zio had fainted. They didn't know how to explain this to their superiors when they returned. Chapter 16. Not only had they failed to harm Yun Ruoyan, but Pei Zio had fallen into the water and remained unconscious. Both Yun Ruoyao and Yi Qianying were vexed. The servants carried the unconscious Pei Zio into the carriage, and the few of them went down the mountain and hurried back home. On the way, both Yun Ruoyao and Yi Qianying looked worried, unsure of how to explain themselves. Yi Qianying, in particular, had been taking care of Pei Zio the entire time. Yun Ruoyan leaned against the carriage as if the matter had nothing to do with her. Occasionally she would glance at the other three, a smile on her face. In her past life she was the only one who was anxious, and the other two were just there to watch the drama unfold. This time, however, it was the opposite. She was the only one watching the drama unfold. It seemed that even the heavens had been too unfair to her in her past life, and were giving her a chance to make up for it all. From the corner of her eye she glanced at Pei Zio. Perhaps because the cold had entered his body, his handsome face was pale, and he shuddered from time to time. In order to form a marriage alliance with the Yun family and save an ugly and useless daughter of his, he was even willing to do something as dangerous as jumping into the lake. It was no wonder that she had been so easily fooled by him in her past life. Yun Ruoyan looked away in disgust. What should we do? Young Master Pei hasn't woken up yet. Will he be all right? Xianxia used her handkerchief to dry his wet hair as she spoke. The water in the lake is so cold that young Master Pei must have caught a cold. Look at how pale his face is, he's probably going to fall ill. Ruoyao was also worried. The two of them turned to look at Ruoyan at the same time. Why are you looking at me? Ruoyan pretended to be surprised. If he's sick, ask for a physician. I'm not a physician. Ruoyao and Xianxia both looked incredulous. Sister, aren't you worried at all? Ruoyao asked. Young Master Pei has always been good to you, and he even jumped into the lake to save you. I thought that you and young Master Pei were already in love. I'm afraid my sister's eyesight isn't good and she saw wrongly. She glanced at Xianxia and Pei Zio, who were sitting together. Sister Ying and young Master Pei are clearly closer. I heard that when she was punished to kneel, young Master Pei secretly sent her quite a few delicacies. Sister Royao, don't make a mistake. When Xianxia heard this, her face immediately turned red. Just as she was about to speak, the servant's voice came from outside the carriage. Ladies were home. The carriage stopped, and Yun Ruoyan was just about to step out of the carriage when Xianxia grabbed her. Are you going to leave just like that? What about young Master Pei? Send him back to the Peis, of course, Yun Ruoyan replied matter-of-factly. What else do you want? Faced with Yun Ruoyan's calmness, Xianxia didn't know what to do. Based on her understanding of Yun Ruoyan, Pei Zio must have been moved and blamed himself for saving her. Even if he asked her to repay him with her body, she would be willing to do so. However, the Yun Ruoyan in front of her was completely unperturbed, and she didn't seem worried at all. Young Master Pei jumped into the lake to save you. Shouldn't you stay behind and take care of him? Xianxia asked angrily. Yun Ruoyan glanced at her and retorted without hesitation. I think you're taking good care of him, sister. Young Master Pei is a man of striking appearance, and he would make a good son-in-law. Although the Peis aren't as good as the Yuns, they're not far off from your family. I'd rather not compete with you for such a good opportunity. Yun Ruoyan's words were sincere. In her past life, the two of them had put on a good show in front of everyone, but in the shadows, they had done countless dirty deeds together. Now, it seemed that they were truly a match made in heaven, and it would be a pity if they didn't end up together. Moreover, I also fell into the lake. Yun Ruoyan gestured at her drenched clothes. If I don't go back and change, I'm afraid I'll fall sick as well. Yun Ruoyan ignored the two of them and walked straight into the Yun Manor, leaving Xianxia and Yun Ruoyao staring at each other in dismay. Once Yun Ruoyan entered the manor, she went straight to her own rooms. When Peony and Shilan saw their mistress in such a state, they hurriedly asked her what had happened as they prepared a bath and dry clothes. I was tricked, but I didn't lose out, Yun Ruoyan said as she sent them away. She took off her wet clothes, leaving only her white undergarments on. Without bothering to take a bath, she entered the pocket dimension. Qiuqiu. As soon as Yun Ruoyan entered the pocket dimension, Qiuqiu leaped to her side and looked at her with its large amber eyes. Congratulations, mistress. You've obtained a great treasure today. Qiuqiu exclaimed happily. Then, it stood up on its hind legs and spun around in a circle, seemingly unable to contain its joy. Yun Ruoyan knew that Qiuqiu was referring to the Feilai blade, and that it was one of the most famous weapons in the armory. Even so, she was still amused by its happy expression. Mistress, look. Qiuqiu's body turned in a certain direction. Yun Ruoyan looked in its direction and saw a strange purple glow in the mist. Yun Ruoyan walked over and saw the Feilai blade floating in midair. The Feilai blade's outer appearance was similar to that of a crescent moon. Its blade was black, and its edge glowed with a faint purple light. A faint cold aura emanated from the light. Mistress, as far as I know, the Feilai blade can change its size, is incredibly sharp and can kill without leaving a trace. But what's with the cold aura emanating from it? Qiuqiu circled the blade once, its expression serious. Perhaps it's because it's been soaking in the lake for too long, and it's been affected by the cold. There wasn't much information on the Feilai blade in the armory, so Yun Ruoyan could only guess. That's a possibility. Qiuqiu propped its chin with its paw as it thought. As Yun Ruoyan got closer and closer to the Feilai blade, she suddenly felt a strange attraction to the bracelet on her wrist. Yun Ruoyan subconsciously took another step forward and slowly reached out her hand. Mistress, be careful. Qiuqiu, who had been deep in thought, suddenly shouted. Aya. As soon as Qiuqiu's voice fell, Yun Ruoyan let out a cry of pain. Just as her hand had gotten closer and closer to the Feilai blade, the blade, which had been quietly floating in midair, suddenly attacked her like a small beast that had been startled awake. All she saw was a flash of purple light and her vision blurred. Her fingers turned cold and a 3-inch-long gash appeared on her right middle finger. Blood flowed freely. Chapter 17. Xuanhuan held her bleeding finger, her eyes unmoving as she stared at the Feili blade floating in the air. The Feili blade was currently undergoing a strange transformation. The blade, stained with her blood, emitted a purple glow that was even more dazzling than before. A similar purple mist floated out of the blade, slowly coalescing above the blade and forming a humanoid shape. Xuanhuan stared in shock. "Mistress, back up." Xiaoqiu leaped in front of Xuanhuan. "Xiaoqiu." Xuanhuan's voice trembled. What's that?" "It's a sword spirit," Xiaoqiu replied. "Any divine weapon that possesses spiritual energy can form its own sword spirit." Xuanhuan had only heard about divine weapons and sword spirits from her former master. These were treasures that even top-tier blade masters might not be able to possess, and most people would never have the opportunity to see one in their lifetime. She hadn't expected to see one today. "Mistress, you have to be careful. Sword spirits are usually disagreeable and they don't know right from wrong. They're only loyal to their master," Xiaoqiu reminded. Who is it that has disturbed my sweet dreams?" the sword spirit asked. Although Xuanhuan couldn't see his face clearly, his figure and voice suggested that he was an old man. "My name is Xuanhuan." Xuanhuan ignored Xiaoqiu's attempts to stop her and stepped forward. "Greetings, senior sword spirit." The sword spirit leaned forward and looked at Xuanhuan. "Oh, so it's a little girl. How dare you wake me up?" the sword spirit suddenly shouted, startling Xuanhuan. Xiaoqiu also jumped up and shouted, "You're quite bold, sword spirit. How dare you hurt my mistress? Xiaoqiu won't let you off." Xuanhuan hurriedly pulled back Xiaoqiu, who was about to pounce on the sword spirit. "Senior sword spirit, I didn't mean to disturb your sleep. I just happened to find this Feili blade in the lake and I brought it back with me." The sword spirit ignored Xuanhuan, instead looking at Xiaoqiu, who was in her arms, baring its fangs. "There's also a small, sealed mythical beast here." The sword spirit made a gesture of stroking his beard. "This space is also not bad. The amount of spiritual power isn't inferior to that of the cold pond. It's also a good place to sleep. In your dreams. This is my territory. It's not a place where you can sleep whenever you want," Xiaoqiu shouted. "Hee hee." The old sword spirit sat cross-legged on the Feili blade. "Even though you're a divine beast, it's a pity that you've been sealed. Right now you don't even have a tenth of your original strength. I'm afraid you're no match for me. In a bit I'll kill the two of you. Isn't this my territory?" The sword spirit's human form was blurry, but his eyes flashed with a sharp purple light. Xuanhuan frowned. Just as Xiaoqiu had said, sword spirits were all perverse by nature. How could they so easily want to kill her? Xuanhuan had already died once, and the heavens had finally given her a chance to make a comeback. She didn't want to die again so easily. Just as she was about to turn the bracelet on her wrist and leave the space, Xiaoqiu's voice suddenly rang out in her mind. "Mistress, use a blood sacrifice to subdue this old man." This was the first time Xiaoqiu had used a telepathic technique on her, and Xuanhuan didn't know how to react. She looked at Xiaoqiu, who turned back to look at her, its amber eyes shining with a crafty light. "What's a blood sacrifice and how do I use it?" Xuanhuan asked in her mind, and Xiaoqiu's voice rang out once more in her mind. "Just now, mistress, you used your blood to awaken the sword spirit, so the Feili blade already has your mark on it. Mistress, as long as you turn your blood into blood fire and refine the Feili blade, you'll be able to subdue the sword spirit." Xiaoqiu even taught Xuanhuan an incantation that she could recite in her heart. Xuanhuan closed her eyes and released her hand, allowing the blood to flow freely from her right hand. "Use my blood to refine the divine weapon. The spirit of the divine weapon, acknowledge me as its master." The sword spirit sat cross-legged on top of the Feili blade. Seeing that neither of them were moving nor speaking, it suddenly reacted and directed the Feili blade at Xuanhuan. Xiaoqiu leapt into the air, and the Feili blade struck its body. Xiaoqiu's body was thrown far away, and it fell into the mist, disappearing. The sword spirit had used quite a bit of strength in that attack, and Xiaoqiu's injuries were likely quite severe. Xuanhuan was anxious, but she didn't stop chanting the incantation. "A little girl like you wants to be my master? Go to hell." The sword spirit turned into a streak of light and shot mercilessly at Xuanhuan. At the same time, Xuanhuan stretched out her bleeding finger in the direction of the sword spirit's attack. Use my blood to refine the divine weapon. Divine weapon, sword spirit, recognize me as its master. Suddenly the blood on Xuanhuan's finger glowed red as if it had caught fire. The fire turned into a line of fire that clashed with the sword spirit's streak of light. Then the stream of light was entangled by the fiery threads, becoming tighter and tighter. The sword spirit's cries of pain and pleas for mercy came from within the stream of light. Xuanhuan continued chanting the incantation, and the light from the line of fire grew brighter and brighter. Gradually the sword spirit's pleas grew softer and softer, and the streak of light that was surrounded by the blood flames also grew smaller and smaller, until it finally became one with the blood flames. It's done, mistress. Qiuqiu's voice came from within the mist. Only when she heard Qiuqiu's voice did Xuanhuan's heart finally relax, and she stopped chanting the incantation. As if summoned, the blood fire returned to her fingertips. It's done, mistress. Qiuqiu ran to Xuanhuan's side and ran around her happily. The Feilai blade has been refined into your middle finger, and from now on, the sword spirit will have to call you mistress just like me. In the future, if anyone dares to bully you mistress, you just have to point a finger at them, and the Feilai blade will fly out and teach them a lesson. Xuanhuan exited the pocket dimension. Because she had obtained a treasure, she was in a good mood. She was just about to take off her clothes and take a hot bath when Xianxia suddenly barged into the yard. Miss, my mistress is currently bathing and she can't see you. Peony tried her best to stop her, but Xianxia was a cultivator and Peony was pushed to the ground. Peony, don't stop her. Let her in. Xuanhuan found a robe to drape over herself, then sat down at the table and sipped on the hot tea that Xilan had prepared. When Xianxia pushed open the door, she saw Xuanhuan's relaxed expression. Sister, aren't you worried about young Master Pei at all? Xianxia suppressed the anger in her heart and put on a pitiful expression. Young Master Pei still hasn't woken up and you're here sipping tea? Chapter 18. In response to Xianxia's question, Xuanhuan replied coolly, Didn't I say that I'm not a physician? Send him back to the Peis, and they'll find a physician to treat young Master Pei. Ever since Xianxia had entered the house, Xuanhuan hadn't looked at her at all. Xianxia frowned. She was finding it harder and harder to understand her sister. When she was young, she had often returned to the Yun household with her mother. She had grown up with Xuanhuan, and she thought she knew her very well. In her mind, Xuanhuan had been a genius at cultivation, and apart from cultivating, she had never taken the initiative to get close to anyone else. Everyone thought that she was proud and aloof, but Xianxia knew that it was only because of the birthmark on her face that she felt inferior. As a result, when she deliberately tried to get close to Xuanhuan, she easily gained her trust. After interacting with her for a while, she discovered that not only did Xuanhuan feel inferior, but she also had a soft and unassertive personality. When they played together, Xuanhuan would listen to everything the others said, never having any opinions of her own. She really didn't have the air of an elite or the air of a wife-born daughter. From then on, Xianxia looked down on Xuanhuan. When Xuanhuan became a cripple and an ugly girl, Xianxia hated her even more, feeling that she wasn't worthy of her status. Xianxia had helped Xuanhuan plot against Xuanhuan, trying to pull her down from her position as wife-born daughter. Only then would she feel better. But when did Xuanhuan suddenly change? She had become so unfathomable. Xianxia had plotted against her time and time again, but not only had Xianxia seen through them, she had even turned the tables on her. Xuanhuan felt Xianxia's gaze on her. She put down the teacup in her hand and turned back. Sister, why are you looking at me like that? Brother Muyuan warned you that if you look at my birthmark too much, you'll get a pinprick. Xianxia's train of thought was interrupted by Xianxia's taunting words. Big sister really knows how to joke. Little sister is too worried for big sister. When we sent young Master Pei back, under Master Pei's questioning, we had no choice but to tell him that he had jumped into the lake to save his sister. Xianxia feigned helplessness. Master Pei is very angry, saying that you don't understand etiquette. He wants you to go to the Pei Manor and take care of young Master Pei. Xuanhuan rubbed her forehead. You're the ones who didn't make it in time to tell Pei Xiong, aren't you? She didn't have a good impression of this father-in-law from her previous life. In her past life, after she had married into the Peis, they had exchanged no more than 3 sentences, and he had only treated her as a decoration. Now that he thought about it, the Pei family's patriarch, Pei Xiong, seemed like a brute, but he was actually extremely shrewd. It was very likely that he was the culprit behind the Yun and Lin family's scheme. Sister, come back to the Pei residence with me now. Otherwise, if old Master Pei comes looking for us, it would be bad if he alarmed Uncle. Seeing that Yun Ruoyan wouldn't budge, Yi Qianying brought up Yun Ruoyan's father to pressure her. Yun Ruoyan sighed as she recalled how, in her past life, she had eagerly followed Pei Zio to the Pei household and taken care of him. In the end, she had even forced her grandfather to take out his family heirloom pill, saving him but harming both families. In this life, no matter what, she wouldn't repeat that mistake. Without the Lin family's pill, she wanted to see if Pei Zio would be able to survive. If he died just like that, it would be a clean death. Sister, please pass on a message to old Master Pei that I've also fallen into the lake. Although my condition isn't as serious as young Master Pei's, I'm still bedridden and can't leave the house. Yun Ruoyan stood up. When I'm a little better, I'll pay him a visit to thank him. I'm tired and I'm going to rest. Yun Ruoyan walked straight into her room. Yi Qianying sighed behind her, but when she didn't get a response, she flung her sleeves and left. Yun Ruoyan had Peony change the tub of hot water and she took a good bath. She had lost quite a bit of blood from the blood refining technique, and her body was indeed a little weak. After her bath, Yun Ruoyan went to sleep. As she slept, she heard Shilan's panicked voice. Miss, it's bad. Miss, wake up. Yun Ruoyan opened her eyes and sat up on her elbows, only to see Shilan's anxious expression. What's the matter? It's old Master Pei, Shilan stammered. Shilan stammered. Peony was trying to stop her, but she couldn't. Let me wake her up. Outside there was a commotion. Let Yun Ruoyan out. A man's voice rushed into the courtyard, followed by Peony's voice. Old Master Pei, Miss Ruoyan is resting. This is a lady's room and it's not convenient for you to enter. She's still resting? Pei Xiong roared. My son's about to die and she's still sleeping? Master Pei, you can't. Peony was still trying to stop him. Old Master Pei, please wait a moment. A clear female voice came from within the room. Wait until Ruoyan has tidied up her appearance. After Shilan helped Yun Ruoyan with her makeup, she opened the door and welcomed Pei Xiong into the room. She was very courteous. When Pei Xiong saw Yun Ruoyan standing gracefully in the hall and bowing at him, he didn't dare to be rude. Old Master Pei, please sit. Yun Ruoyan gestured for him to sit. No need. My son's in a critical situation and I don't have time for pleasantries. I'm a boorish man, so I won't beat around the bush. Old Master Pei suppressed the anger in his heart, his tone still unfriendly. The physician said that Zio fell into the lake, and the cold has entered his body, harming his spiritual essence. I need the Lin family's core foundation pill to save him. I'm here to get the pill from you. Old Master Pei's confident tone reminded Yun Ruoxue of her past life, when he had used the same tone to force her to go to the Lins to get the pill. At that time, Yun Ruoyan had been so distraught that she had forgotten the importance of the pill to the Lins. All she could think about was saving Pei Zio, kneeling in front of her grandfather and begging him. Old Master Pei, do you know that the core foundation pill doesn't belong to me? Yun Ruoyan asked calmly. Of course I do. It's an heirloom of the Lins, which is why I'm here to get it from you, Old Master Pei replied matter-of-factly. Old Master Pei's tone remained matter-of-fact. Miss Yun, please act quickly. My Zio cannot afford to wait. Yun Ruoyan laughed coldly in her heart, and her tone turned cold as well. Why should I? She asked. Why? Pei Xiong glared at her. Zio jumped into the lake because of you. As the sole wife-born daughter of the Yun family, are you so ungrateful that you'll ruin the Yun family's reputation? Old Master Pei, you must be mistaken. Yun Ruoyan didn't back down. First of all, Pei Zio jumped into the lake himself, and I was the one who saved him, not the other way around. If we're talking about gratitude, he should be the one doing it for me, not the other way around. Chapter 19. Pei Xiong choked on Yun Ruoyan's words. Clenching his fists, he exclaimed, What a daughter of the Yun family! What a daughter of the Yun family! When Peony and Shilan saw that he was about to attack, they stepped in front of Yun Ruoyan, but Yun Ruoyan stepped in front of the two maidservants to protect her. Sister, your words are too heartless. Just then a female voice came from outside. The speaker was none other than Yi Qianying, who was supporting Madame and as she walked in. Although you were the one who saved young Master Pei in the end, it was also because of you that he risked his life for you. How could you say something so heartless? Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but curse Yi Qianying in her heart. Yun Ruoyan hadn't been frightened by Yi Qianying's appearance in the morning, but now that Pei Xiong had entered her courtyard, Yi Qianying had brought Madame in over. Madame An had always viewed her as a thorn in her side, a thorn in her flesh. Even when Xuanhuan was still an elite of the family, Madame An was polite to her on the surface. Now that she was crippled, Madame An would try to suppress her so that her own daughter could take over. Xuanhuan was displeased that someone who had never entered her courtyard had come looking for trouble. Despite her displeasure, she still bowed respectfully to Madame An. "Mother, why aren't you resting at this hour? Why are you here at my cottage?" Madame An ignored Xuanhuan's greeting, her expression stern. "Ruoyan, your sister has already told me what happened this morning. How could you, as his elder sister, have your two sisters secretly send young Master Pei back without us knowing?" Madame An's tone grew even harsher. "If word of this gets out, you won't be the only one to be called an ingrate. The entire Yun family will bear the brunt of it." "Mother." Xuanhuan straightened her back and replied in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing, "Being an ingrate is a little too much, and I wouldn't do such a thing. I can't bear such a reputation, and I definitely won't let my family bear it." Madame An nodded in satisfaction. "That's good. In that case, go to your grandfather's house and get your medicine." "Get medicine?" Xuanhuan put on an awkward expression. "The core foundation pill is an heirloom of my maternal family, and there's only one left in this world. It's not something that can be taken out so easily." Madame An frowned. "Ruoyan, didn't you just say?" "Mother, you misunderstood." Xuanhuan interrupted her. "What I meant was that I don't owe the Peis anything, so I'm not being ungrateful. This has nothing to do with whether or not I took the medicine." As soon as she finished speaking, she heard a loud bang. Pei Xiong slammed his palm on the table. Because the force was too great, the table leg that withstood the force broke with a crack, and the tea set on the table fell to the ground. What a sharp mouth to distort the truth. Pei Xiong glared at Xuanhuan. "I've truly witnessed the demeanor of the Yun family's wife-born daughter. It looks like I'll have to demand justice from Master Yun today. My daughter is stubborn and mischievous, please don't take offense at her." Madame An hurriedly tried to placate him. "Master Pei is out on business today, so let me discipline my daughter. I'll be sure to give you a satisfactory answer." Hearing Madame An's words, Master Pei suppressed his anger, but his fists were still clenched tightly. Madame An turned around and looked at Xuanhuan sternly. "I thought you were a sensible child, but I didn't expect you to be so stubborn and mischievous." After saying that, she sighed. "Elder sister passed away early. Master and I doted on you and couldn't bear to be too strict with you, causing you to be so arrogant and spoiled. It looks like I'll have to discipline you more strictly in the future. As your mother, I order you to retrieve the pill from the lins." "Mother, you're making things difficult for me. Everyone knows how important the core foundation pill is to the lins, and I'm a member of the Yun family, so I can't make the decision for the lins. Even if father himself gave me the order, I'd say the same thing." Xuanhuan had already made up her mind. Even if the emperor himself were to appear, she wouldn't go retrieve the pill. "Very well." Pei Xiong's voice was low, but the anger in his heart was boiling. "Since you're unwilling to save Zio, then you'll have to accompany him in death." As he spoke, he swung his fist at Xuanhuan. It was fast and vicious, and in the blink of an eye, it was right in front of Xuanhuan. Everyone thought that Xuanhuan wouldn't be able to dodge this punch. Pei Xiong was a renowned forge master, and with his cultivation he could easily kill Xuanhuan with a single punch. But just as the fist was about to land on Xuanhuan, she somehow managed to dodge it. The punch landed on the chair behind Xuanhuan, and with a loud crack the chair shattered into pieces. Pei Xiong couldn't believe his eyes. How could this useless piece of trash from the Yun family have dodged his attack? Pei Xiong raised his fist at Xuanhuan, who had dodged to the side. He'd only used 30% of his strength in the previous punch, but this time he used 70%. Xuanhuan gritted her teeth. "You forced my hand." Just as she was about to release the Feilai blade, she heard her grandmother's voice. "Who dares to cause trouble in the Yun household? Do you think there's no one left in the Yun household?" Xuanhuan's grandmother had arrived at the door. As soon as Pei Xiong's fist stopped, Xuanhuan hurriedly ran toward the door, feigning panic as she called out to her grandmother. "Ruoyan, don't be afraid. Come to me." Her grandmother pulled Xuanhuan behind her, then turned to Madame N, who was standing to the side. "What kind of mother are you? How could you allow an outsider to humiliate your own child?" The grandmother's voice was harsh, and her eyes shone with a sharp light. Madame N immediately lowered her head. "I was careless just now and didn't protect Ruoyan in time. However, Ruoyan was in the wrong in the first place. Please, mother, investigate this matter. Oh. The grandmother's gaze drifted toward Pei Xiong. I was rash just now. Pei Xiong bowed. I was just anxious to save my son. Please, madam, investigate this matter. Then, under Madame Anne's instructions, Yi Qianying recounted the entire story. Because Yun Ruoyan was present, she didn't exaggerate, only making Pei Zio seem more courageous and reckless. Ruoyan, come with me. The grandmother motioned for Yun Ruoyan to follow her into the inner chambers. Once inside, the Yun matriarch turned to Yun Ruoyan. You have to save this Pei Zio. Chapter 20. Yun Ruoyan hadn't expected her grandmother, who had clearly sided with her at the start, to suddenly change her tune. Although she didn't understand why, she still maintained her stance. Grandmother is wise. Although Pei Zio jumped into the frigid lake, it was not as simple as saving me as my sister said. The Yun matriarch smiled approvingly at Yun Ruoyan's words. Tell me, what do you mean by, not simple? Although Pei Zio has always been very attentive to me, I can tell that he didn't mean it. Although he tried his best to hide it, I could still detect the disgust he revealed when he looked at me. Yun Ruoyan subconsciously touched the birthmark on her face. When Pei Zio looked at her birthmark, she could clearly see the disgust in his eyes. Even she was surprised that she hadn't noticed such an obvious disgust in her past life. At the time, she had been so self-abased that if a man treated her well, she would entrust herself to him without a care in the world. What a pitiful fool. Her grandmother sighed and held her hand, her gaze both approving and loving. Yen, you're truly a smart child. I'm relieved. She patted Yun Ruoyan's hand and continued, if the Peis want to form a relationship with us, then Pei Xiong will have to rely on his son. I'm sure that Pei Zio listened to his father's arrangements and purposefully befriended you. Yun Ruoyan looked at her grandmother's wizened face, as though nothing could escape her eyes. In her past life, when she had insisted on marrying Pei Zio, her grandmother hadn't agreed either. But at the time, she had been blinded by her own greed and couldn't see this. It's just that Pei Xiong himself didn't expect such an accident to occur. Pei Zio is the only son of the Pei family, and if he really dies, the two families will be at odds. Her grandmother looked at Yun Ruoyan. The Li kingdom is expanding its influence, and it's better for the Yuns to have a friend than an enemy. Yen, for the sake of the bigger picture, you have to go and get the core foundation pill to save Pei Zio. Her grandmother's analysis was very reasonable, and Yun Ruoyan couldn't refute her. She really wanted to tell her grandmother that saving Pei Zio would very likely harm both the Yuns and the Lins. However, she knew that no one would believe the words of a 13-year-old child, so she could only take it one step at a time. Grandmother. Yun Ruoyan lowered her head obediently. I'll listen to you. Yun Ruoyan hurried to the Lin manor with Pei Xiong. When the Lin sisters saw Yun Ruoyan, they warmly pulled her aside to talk to her. This touched Yun Ruoyan, who hadn't experienced much sisterhood in her past life. Miss Yun, please hurry up, Pei Xiong impatiently urged from the side. When Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingchen saw a stranger follow Yun Ruoyan into their home, they looked at her suspiciously. Yun Ruoyan didn't have time to explain. Instead, she asked for her grandfather's whereabouts. Lin Qingxue told her that her grandfather had been in the pill-making chambers these past few days. She knew that her grandfather must have been refining an antidote for her, and her heart was moved. Pei Xiong wanted to follow her, but the Lin siblings stopped him in the main hall. Grandfather, Yun Ruoyan called out softly as she walked into the outer room of the pill-making chambers. Pill-making was an extremely taxing task, and Yun Ruoxue was most afraid of interruptions. After calling out to her grandfather, she waited quietly outside. Yen, you're here. Lin Zainan's voice came from within. Come in. Only then did Yun Ruoyan enter the pill-making chambers. Lin Zainan was sitting cross-legged in front of a cauldron about half the height of a grown man, a white flame blazing within. Lin Zainan pushed out his palms, infusing spiritual energy into the cauldron as the white flame danced. There were 4 professions on the Xuanhuan continent: Pillmasters, Forgemasters, Blademasters, and Summoners. Pillmasters were the rarest of the 4, and there were no more than 3 Pillmasters of Lin Zainan's caliber in the entire Li kingdom. As a result, even though the Lin family was small, they weren't afraid of outsiders, much less the Peis. If not for Yun Ruoyan, they probably wouldn't even be able to enter the Lin manor. Lin Zainan clasped his hands together and opened them toward the cauldron. A brown pill flew out of the cauldron and into his palm, and he turned to look kindly at Yun Ruoyan. Yen, is there something you need from me this time? Usually Yun Ruoyan wouldn't disturb him while he was refining pills, so Lin Zainin was able to guess that she had something to ask of him. Yin, I do have something to ask of you. Yun Ruoxia didn't beat around the bush, directly telling him what had happened. Grandfather, the core foundation pill is an heirloom of the Lin family. Yun Ruoyan was both exasperated and unwilling. Lin Zainin paused for a moment before replying, although the pill is valuable, a person is more important. Lin Zainin extended a hand toward Yun Ruoxia, and she hurriedly helped him up. The Lin family is small, and in your generation the only ones left are Qingxue, Qingchen, and you. The three of you are the most important to the family. This is an antidote. Lin Zainin handed the pill he had just refined to Yun Ruoyan. Although it can't completely remove the poison from your body in one go, it can slow the spread of the poison. Take it quickly and then we'll go get the core foundation pill. Yun Ruoyan accepted the pill, her eyes brimming with tears. In her past life, when she had knelt and begged for her grandfather's help, she recalled the look of disappointment and sorrow on his face. Grandfather, I'll definitely protect the Lin family with my two sisters. Yun Ruoyan tilted her head back and swallowed the pill. She felt a cool, refreshing energy rise from her dantian, and her entire body felt comfortable. Lin Zainin opened the secret chamber where the pills were kept, took out a sandalwood box and handed it to Yun Ruoyan. When Yun Ruoyan opened the box, she saw a purplish-red pill that emitted a strong medicinal aroma. This was the core foundation pill. Refining core foundation pills requires the cultivation of a 6th-rank pill master. Ever since I reached 5th rank, I haven't been able to progress any further. I'm afraid I'll never be able to refine one in this lifetime. Lin Zainin looked at the pill with a complicated expression. This was refined by my grandfather, and there's only one left in the Lin family. Slap. Yun Ruoyan slammed the lid back on the box, her eyes fierce. We can't let the Pays have our core foundation pill for nothing. Lin Zainin raised an eyebrow at Yun Ruoyan's words. Yen, do you have any ideas? Yun Ruoyan nodded. I've unintentionally heard that the Pays have a high-grade pill furnace. Why don't we exchange it for paying xiangs? Lin Zainin looked at Yun Ruoyan in surprise. Not everyone knew that the Pays had a high-grade pill furnace. It turned out that a few hundred years ago, the Pays had produced a talented pill master. Unfortunately, it was short-lived, and after that pill master, the Pays had never produced another talented pill master. Although the pill furnace left behind by that pill master was a treasure, it was little more than a decoration in the Pays household, and it was slowly forgotten. In her past life, in order to win over a pill master from another kingdom, Pei Xiong had given the furnace as a gift, and Yun Ruoyan had been present at the time. Lin Zainin didn't know that Yun Ruoyan had been reborn. All he knew was that his grandson had always been hiding his abilities, but his ears and eyes were actually quite sharp. He must have unintentionally heard someone mention it and remembered it. The Lin family wasn't like the Yun family. Yun Ruoyan didn't have a mother to look after her, and not only had she been disfigured by poison, her talent for cultivation had been restricted. If she hadn't known how to hide her abilities, she probably wouldn't have lived to this day. He was growing more and more fond of this granddaughter of his. All right, we'll do as you say. Lin Zainin smiled. Chapter 21. Lin Zainin walked into the great hall with the box of pills, and Yun Ruoyan followed respectfully behind him, an aggrieved expression on her face. Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingchen were just about to go over and joke around with Yun Ruoyan when they saw her expression, as if she had just been scolded. When they looked at their grandfather's displeased expression, they stood quietly to the side. Elder Lin. Pei Xiong hurriedly walked up and bowed. My apologies for interrupting your pill-making. Lin Zainin raised a hand to stop him from bowing. Since you've already disturbed me, there's no need for such formalities. Pei Xiong looked embarrassed, but he continued. My son, Pei Zio, jumped into the lake to save Elder Lin's granddaughter. Now that he's in grave danger, please bestow a core foundation pill upon him. As the head of a pill-making family and a 5th-rank pill master himself, Lin Zainin's status in the Li Kingdom was extraordinary. Pei Xiong dared to act arrogantly in the Yun household, but in front of Lin Zainin, he had no choice but to lower his head. Yin already told me about this matter. Lin Zainin sat down at the head of the table, while Yun Ruoyan and her two sisters stood together, their hands by their sides without a word. This was the best course of action for the grandfather and granddaughter pair, to have Lin Zainin deal with Pei Xiong. Yin said that although she was the one who saved young Master Pei, he did jump into the lake to save her. Even if he didn't do anything meritorious, he'd at least put in some effort. Lin Zainin stroked his beard, a half-smile on his face. Pei Xiong choked once more, but he didn't dare get angry at Lin Zainin. He could only nod. Yes, my son didn't know how to swim and he was a little rash, but he had good intentions. Saving a life is a good thing, but he has to act within his means. If he were to lose his life, it wouldn't be worth it. Pei Xiong could clearly hear the hidden meaning in Lin Zainin's words, and he immediately blushed. Now that my son has been saved, I'll definitely teach him to act within his means. That's good. Lin Zainin nodded. Pei Xiong looked hopefully at the pill box in Lin Zainin's hands. I'm sure this is the core foundation pill, Elder Lin. I'd like to thank you for saving my life. As he spoke, he bowed again. Xuanhuan, who was watching from the sidelines, couldn't help but admire Pei Xiong. Back at the Yun Manor, he treated her like a lord. But in front of his grandfather, he immediately became a grandson. This change was too fast. Wait. Lin Zainin interrupted him once more, raising the core foundation pill in front of him with a hint of reluctance in his tone. This is the last foundation pill of my Lin family. It is the blood, sweat, and tears of my ancestors. Pei Xiong stared unblinkingly at the foundation fortifying pill in Lin Zainin's hand, afraid that something might happen. But the more he feared, the more likely it would happen. Lin Zainin continued slowly, even if young Master Pei jumped into the lake to save Yenra, I can't just hand it over for free. Otherwise my family's pills would seem worthless. The muscles on Pei Xiong's face twitched involuntarily. Then what other conditions does Elder Lin have? Lin Zainin stood up from his seat at the head of the table and looked at Pei Xiong with a look of approval. This core foundation pill is an heirloom of the Lin family, and naturally I'd like to exchange it with another heirloom. Although your family's high-grade furnace is a little lacking, for Yenner's sake, I'll reluctantly exchange it with you. Pei Xiong's heart trembled. He felt as if he'd fallen into someone else's trap, and he couldn't help turning to look at Xuanhuan. But Xuanhuan's head was lowered as if she'd been taught a lesson. She didn't look like someone who'd dig a pit for themselves. Very few people knew of the Pei family's possession of a high-grade cauldron, let alone a young girl like Xuanhuan. It seemed that she'd stumbled into Lin Zainin's trap this time. The Pei family hadn't produced a pill master in several generations, and although this furnace was a good item, it had no real value to the Pei family. It was just that Pei Xiong's heart ached to part with it. I won't hide it from Elder Lin. My Pei clan has an ancestral rule. In order to commemorate our ancestors' alchemy master, we are not allowed to use the alchemy furnace unless absolutely necessary. Pei Xiong made up an excuse. Oh. Lin Zainin didn't waste any more time. It looks like Nephew Xian isn't in a hurry to save Xuanhuan then. Elder Lin, please wait. Pei Xiong was both angry and anxious, but he still had to lower his stance. Zio is the only heir of the Pei family, and I have to save him no matter what. Now is indeed the time to do so. Pei Xiong seemed to have made up his mind. Alright, I'll make the exchange. Pei Xiong also proposed a condition. Xuanhuan would first bring the pill back to life, and only after confirming that he was fine could she take the furnace away with her. With Lin Zainin by her side, Xuanhuan wasn't afraid that Pei Xiong would renege on his promise, and she followed him to the Pei Manor with the core foundation pill. As she entered the Pei Manor and looked at the familiar courtyard, Xuanhuan couldn't help but feel as if it were a lifetime ago. Xuanhuan had spent a full 5 years in this courtyard. In those 5 years she'd been worried about her gains and losses, and she'd greeted everyone with a smile and tried to please them. But in the end she'd still died a horrible death. Miss Pei Zio still waiting. Pei Xiong, who was walking in front, turned around and urged her. Xuanhuan took a deep breath, suppressing her grief and anger as she quickened her pace to catch up. As soon as she entered Pei Zio's courtyard, a woman's wailing could be heard. Zio, my son, you can't abandon your mother. Pei Xiong stumbled and almost fell. He hurriedly ran into the house. Xuanhuan could tell that this was the voice of Pei Zio's mother, her mother-in-law from her past life, the Yun matriarch. The Yun matriarch was crying her heart out. Xuanhuan stood at the door, craning her neck to look inside. Was he dead? What are you crying for? Zio's not dead yet. Pei Xiong shouted, interrupting the Yun matriarch's sobs. After speaking, he quickly dragged Xuanhuan, who was standing outside, in. Quick, there's still hope. Pei Xiong pressed Xuanhuan to the bed, where Pei Zio was already gasping for air. If they had arrived a few minutes later, he would have been dead by now. As she cursed in her heart, she took out a core foundation pill, pried open Pei Zio's mouth and fed it to him. As soon as the pill entered his mouth, it transformed into a stream of spiritual energy that flowed into his body. Pei Zio's deathly pale face quickly regained some color. Ah, it really is a miracle pill. As the physician took his pulse, he couldn't help but praise the Lin family's miraculous pill. Although it won't cure his illness, at least his life has been spared. Pei Xiong was both happy and pained by the physician's words. Now that the core foundation pill had taken effect, the Pei family's high-grade furnace would have to change its name. Elder Pei, Yun began. Since young Master Pei is fine, I won't stay any longer. Yun Ruoyan didn't want to stay a moment longer. I'll have to trouble Elder Pei to bring me the furnace so that I can report to grandfather. I'll definitely bring it out, Pei Xiong said as if to negotiate. But although Zio's life has been spared, he's still unconscious. No matter what, you have to wait until he wakes up before you can leave, Miss Pei. Yun Ruoyan was very angry at Pei Xiong's deliberate delay, but it wasn't wise to lose her temper in someone else's territory. After all, young Master Pei jumped into the lake to save me. It's only right that I thank him when he wakes up, Yun Ruoyan lied. The physician told Pei Zio that he needed to rest, and all the servants left the room, leaving only Yun Ruoyan and the bedridden Pei Zio in the room. Yun Ruoyan sat down on a chair and played with her hands in boredom. Suddenly, she discovered a purple mole on the middle finger of her right hand. Yun Ruoyan reached out to touch it and it felt cold. What's this? This is a mark left behind by the Feilai blade. Master has only just tamed the Feilai blade, and he hasn't fully fused with it yet, so there's a mark on it. When Master and the Feilai blade are completely fused, the mark will disappear. Oh, I see. Yun Ruoyan nodded in understanding. Master, you can now close your eyes and sense the presence of the Feilai blade, Qiuqiu continued. Yun Ruoyan followed Qiuqiu's instructions and focused, using her mental energy to probe her mind. Immediately, the Feilai blade appeared, floating in her mind. As if sensing her mental energy, the Feilai blade began to spin in her mind, and Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but point a finger at it. A ray of purple light shot out from Yun Ruoyan's right middle finger, breaking through the window with a crack. Ah, Master, you still can't control it well enough. Quick, take it back. Yun Ruoyan was both excited and nervous. She hurriedly followed Qiuqiu's instructions and recalled the Feilai blade. Once again, a ray of purple light shot into her middle finger, forming a small purple mole. Ah, it's so cold. Just then, the unconscious Pei Zio on the bed spoke up. When she had released the Feilai blade earlier, it had indeed brought with it a wave of cold air. Why was Pei Zio so sensitive? Yun Ruoyan clenched her right hand guiltily. The Feilai blade and her pocket dimension were her greatest and most important secrets, and before she could protect herself, she couldn't let anyone else know about them. You're awake. Yun Ruoyan walked up to Pei Zio's bed and asked, Did you just wake up? Ruoyan, are you alright? Pei Zio seemed to have just woken up, and he looked at Yun Ruoyan with concern. I'm so glad you're alright. I saw you fall into the lake, so His concerned expression was quite bewitching, but Yun Ruoyan had long since seen through him. I'm very well, young Master Pei, you should worry more about yourself. Yun Ruoyan interrupted him, her hands clasped behind her back. Since you're awake, young Master Pei, I'll be taking my leave. Yun Ruoyan turned to leave, but Pei Zio suddenly grabbed her hand. I've only just woken up and you're leaving? His tone was aggrieved. The moment he held her hand, Yun Ruoyan's hair stood on end. It was that same hand that had forced the poison into her mouth. Chapter 22. Let go of me. Yun Ruoyan suddenly yelled, flinging Pei Zio's hand away with all her might. Pei Zio froze for a moment before reacting. Ruoyan, what's wrong with you? Why are you being so fierce with me? We're clearly on good terms. Yun Ruoyan turned around and looked at the handsome youth. Slowly, that innocent youth's face transformed into that of an adult, cold and unfeeling Pei Zio. Yun Ruoyan suppressed the urge to slap him. Young Master Pei, I'm afraid you've misunderstood. I've never been on good terms with you. She suddenly smiled miserably as she rubbed the birthmark on her face. You clearly hate my birthmark, but you're still pretending that you don't care about it. What's the point of that? Pei Zio didn't know how to react, and all he could do was stare at Yun Ruoyan in a daze. Yun Ruoyan called a servant to take care of Pei Zio while she went to find Pei Xiong. Pei Xiong had no reason to delay any longer, and he had no choice but to hand over the pill refining furnace. Yun Ruoyan took the furnace and returned to the Lin Manor. Lin Zainan, Lin Qingxue, and Lin Qingchen were all waiting for her in the great hall. As soon as they saw her enter, they immediately rushed up to greet her. "Sister, you're finally back. We were just about to go to the Pei Manor and ask for you," Lin Qingxue said. "Sister, did the Pei family make things difficult for you?" Lin Qingchen asked, concerned. "They wouldn't dare," Lin Zainan replied confidently. "Not just anyone can bully a member of the Lin family." Yun Ruoyan's nose twitched. "Not only did they not dare to bully me, but they even had to obediently hand over the treasure to me." Yun Ruoyan removed the bag from her shoulders, revealing a small metal box. When she opened the box, the high-grade pill refining furnace was revealed. "So this is a high-grade pill refining furnace? It's so small," Lin Qingxue exclaimed. "It's even smaller than the pots in the kitchen." Everyone couldn't help but laugh at her analogy. Yun Ruoyan took out the pill refining furnace, about the size of an incense burner, and handed it to Lin Zainan. "Grandfather, look at this," Lin Zainan said as he took the cauldron and fiddled with it. "The smaller a pill refining furnace is, the more valuable it is, because the smaller it is, the more firepower it can condense. However, most alchemy furnaces were too small to withstand the flames. Only high-grade alchemy furnaces can produce the effect of condensing spirit fire and double the medicinal effect of the refined pills." Lin Zainan stared at the cauldron in his hands, his eyes shining brightly. "This really is something good." Every pillmaster's eyes would light up at the sight of good ingredients and furnaces, she thought. "In the future, grandfather, with this treasure, you'll be able to refine even better pills." Yun Ruoyan smiled, and the Lin sisters nodded in agreement. However, Lin Zainan handed the furnace back to Yun Ruoyan. The youth held a gilded fan in his hand and playfully pointed it at Yun Ruoyan. "How was it? Did I scare you?" Yun Ruoyan was speechless and exasperated. "Why are you so persistent? If you suddenly appear in front of me like this, I'm really going to have to call for help." "There's no point in calling for help. By the time they arrive, I'll have long since disappeared without a trace," the black-robed youth replied nonchalantly. "Then can you tell me why you keep appearing in front of me?" Yun Ruoyan asked patiently. A person wouldn't pester her for no reason, and she wasn't some sort of stunning beauty. "I was asked to do so by someone." The black-robed youth tapped rhythmically on the windowsill with his gilded fan. "Last time someone asked me to give you a quintessence pill. Have you eaten it yet?" If the youth hadn't mentioned it, Yun Ruoyan would have almost forgotten about it. She hurriedly added, "I've done nothing to deserve it. Just you wait." Then she went into the room, retrieved the bottle of quintessence pills and tossed it to the youth. The youth caught the bottle, his expression one of shock. "Don't you know that this is a quintessence pill? It's priceless. You can't even buy it." "I know that this is a quintessence pill. That's why I said that I've done nothing to deserve it." As someone who had lived 2 lifetimes, Yun Ruoyan was even more aware of the fact that she had taken advantage of someone else. The youth craned his neck, about to argue with Yun Ruoyan, when Peony's voice suddenly sounded. "Miss, the master has sent someone to invite you over." "All right, I'll go right away." Yun Ruoyan nodded, then turned to the youth. "No matter who asked you to do so, I don't want to see you ever again. See you never again." Then Yun Ruoyan slammed the window shut. The youth's mouth remained agape for a long time. "Third Highness, how should we explain this to the master?" A black-robed figure appeared by the youth's side with a whoosh. "Just tell him the truth, uncle." Li Qianhuan looked at the pill in his hand, an inexplicable smile appearing on his face. "This Miss Yun is quite interesting, though a little ugly. I didn't expect uncle's appetite to be so heavy." Yun Ruoyan followed a servant to the discussion hall. Yun Lan, Madam, and the 2 Yun sisters and Yi Qianying were all present. Beside Yun Lan sat Envoy Ding. "Now that everyone's here, let's get down to business." Envoy Ding placed the teacup in his hand on the table, took out a booklet, and began to read aloud. "The 2 contestants who have passed the trial and obtained the right to enter the imperial territory are Yun Ruoyan and Yun Ruoyu." Envoy Ding closed the booklet and continued, "However, each family also has a recommendation slot. The Yun family has recommended Yun Ruoyao, while the Pei family has given this slot to Yi Qianying. As a result, all 4 of the young misses present have the right to enter the imperial territory." Yi Qianying's ashen complexion immediately turned rosy, and she couldn't conceal her joy as she hurriedly thanked Envoy Ding. Yun Ruoyan was a little confused. Why would the Pei family give this slot to Yi Qianying? Could it be that Pei Zio was already in cahoots with Yi Qianying? That couldn't be. Based on her experience from her previous life, the two of them wouldn't have gotten together so early on. Yun Ruoyao was publicly acknowledged as the most talented girl in the Yun family, but she had unexpectedly lost to Yun Ruoyan. She was already unhappy to begin with, and even though she had been recommended by her family, she didn't feel the slightest bit of joy. After announcing the list of contestants, Envoy Ding opened a mahogany box on the table, took out 4 tokens, and handed them to each of the 4 young misses. These tokens will allow you to enter the Imperial territory, as well as your credentials to enter Kongming Academy in the future. Only those who leave the Imperial territory with these tokens will be allowed to enter Kongming Academy. Those who don't leave the Imperial territory or lose their tokens won't be able to enter Kongming Academy. After handing over the tokens, Envoy Ding left. Yun Lan looked at the 4 young misses standing before him, quite satisfied with the results of this trial. Not only had his daughters obtained a slot, but even his niece Yi Qianying had been admitted. It was as if the gates of Kongming Academy had been opened wide for the Yun family. When his gaze swept past Yun Ruoyan, however, he couldn't help but pause. Yun Ruoyan stood there quietly. Her face was neither happy nor angry, only calm. As for the other 3 young misses by her side, Yi Qianying's face was still flushed red. She couldn't conceal her joy at having unexpectedly obtained a slot to enter the Imperial territory. Yun Ruoyao, on the other hand, gripped the token tightly in her hands. She had always been quite talented, and although she had been slightly inferior to Yun Ruoyan in the beginning, she had eventually caught up and won Yun Lan's favor. This time, however, she had unexpectedly lost to Yun Ruoyan and had to rely on her family's recommendation to enter the Imperial territory. Her eyes were filled with resentment. Chapter 23. Because Yun Ruoyu had relied on her own ability to obtain the spot, her head was held high, and her proud expression was unmistakable. Compared to the 3 of them, Yun Ruoyan's composure was even more striking. When Yun Ruoyan raised her head, she met her father's approving gaze. She paused for a moment before lowering her head again. Yun Lan's heart was in turmoil. He had once cherished this daughter of his. At that time, Yun Ruoyan's mother, Lin Yueme, hadn't yet died, and the birthmark on Yun Ruoyan's face hadn't been so obvious. However, when Yun Ruoyan was a year old, Lin Yueme suddenly died of a strange illness, and the birthmark on Yun Ruoyan's face began to appear. From then on, there were rumors that Lin Yueme had been cursed to death by Yun Ruoyan. Naturally, Yun Lan didn't believe this rumor. After dismissing a few servants, the rumors died down. But as he looked at the face that bore a resemblance to his late wife slowly being covered by the ugly birthmark, Yun Lan grew more and more disgusted with Yun Ruoyan, and gradually distanced himself from her. When Yun Ruoyan lost her talent for cultivation, his disgust for her became even more pronounced. However, contrary to his expectations, the daughter he had given up on actually relied on her own abilities to obtain the right to enter the Imperial secret territory. He couldn't help but have a whole new level of respect for her. Tomorrow we'll be entering the Imperial territory. Yun Lan stood up from his seat and gestured to his servant, Old Wu. Old Wu carried a tray in front of the 4 of them, upon which were 4 small white porcelain bottles. Here are 4 life quintessence pills, 1 for each of you. If you're injured in the Imperial territory, these pills will help you quickly recover your energy and cultivation. Yun Ruoyao and the others were overjoyed. Pills were very precious items, and even a pill-making family like the Lin family was generous enough to fork out 4 life quintessence pills at once. This was because pill refining was extremely taxing on a pillmaster's spiritual energy, and the Lin family only had 1 pillmaster, Lin Zainan. As a result, the number of pills they could make was limited, so pills were especially important to them. Tomorrow you'll be entering the Imperial territory. Once you've received the pills, go back and rest. The 4 of them bowed and excused themselves. Sister, Yi Qianying called out to Yun Ruoyan from behind, and she turned to look at her. Big sister, I'll be entering the secret realm tomorrow. Please take care of me then. Yi Qianying put on a very sincere expression. By her side, Yun Ruoyu laughed disdainfully. Qianying, don't be so humble. Even if you're in danger, don't you still have me? I'll definitely protect you. Yi Qianying hurriedly complimented her and asked her to take good care of her. At this point, Yun Ruoyao had already buried her unwillingness in her heart. She walked over and smiled. Us sisters must take care of each other and make the Yun family proud. As soon as Yun Ruoyan saw her fake expression, she couldn't stand it anymore. Sisters, you're too polite. If the 3 of you work together, you'll definitely be invincible. I won't be joining in the fun. He turned to leave, but Yun Ruoyu's cold laughter could be heard behind him. Why are you acting like a daughter of the first wife, you ugly freak? When she returned to her rooms, she looked at the white porcelain bottle in her hand and couldn't help but think of the black-robed youth. Just what kind of person could produce 5 life quintessence pills at once? I was asked by someone to visit you, and that bottle of life quintessence pills was also given to you on that person's behalf. The youth's laughter rang out by Xuanhuan's ear. Xuanhuan's heart skipped a beat. Could it be him? The black-robed man who had fallen into her rooms and forcefully kissed her surfaced in her mind. Before he left, he had indeed said that he would cure her of her poison. Could it be that he had asked the black-robed youth to give her those 5 life quintessence pills? Thinking of this, Xuanhuan stood up abruptly. 5 life quintessence pills, and she'd actually returned them. How painful. The night passed uneventfully, and the next day, the 4 Yun girls rode the family's carriages up the Yue mountain, the sacred mountain of the Li kingdom. The imperial territory was located on this very mountain. Sister Royale, look! Yun Ruoyu exclaimed excitedly. So many carriages. Yiqianying and Yun Royale looked out of the carriage, and Yun Ruoyan glanced sideways as well. There were at least 100 carriages on the Yue mountain, and it was quite a sight to behold. Yun Ruoyao, who had been resting ever since she had boarded the carriage, suddenly opened her eyes. The opening of the Imperial Territory and Kongming Academy's recruitment are both major events on the Xuanhuan continent, so of course there would be a lot of people. In contrast to her 2 sisters' fuss, Yun Ruoyao was much calmer. Kongming Academy recruited students once every 3 years, and the Imperial Territory was also open to the public once every 3 years. Each of the 4 major kingdoms of the Xuanhuan continent, the Li, Yu, Mo, and Qin kingdoms, would send their elites to participate, and even some of the smaller kingdoms would try their best to qualify. Becoming a student of Kongming Academy was the dream of every talented child on the Xuanhuan continent. I have to get out of the Imperial Territory and become a student of Kongming Academy. This is the most important step in my life. Yun Ruoyan made up her mind. Just as Yun Ruoyan was deep in thought, she suddenly heard someone call out to her. She turned and opened the window on the other side of the carriage, where she saw the Lin siblings. The 2 sisters were waving at her from the window of the opposite carriage, and Yun Ruoyan hurriedly waved back. She had thought that it would take some effort to find them, but she hadn't expected to run into them so soon. Yun Ruoyan was overjoyed. She would definitely take good care of the Lin sisters. About an hour later, the carriage finally arrived at the top of the Yue mountain. Yun Ruoyan didn't greet anyone else, and instead went straight to meet up with her 2 sisters. She's so cold to her own sisters, but so friendly with those from other families. Yun Ruoyu muttered unhappily as she looked at Yun Ruoyan's back. If she's in danger, don't blame us for not helping her. Forget it, let's leave her be. Yun Ruoyao tugged on Yun Ruoyu's sleeve. We're about to line up to enter the territory, so let's not get separated. Yiqianying also looked at Yun Ruoyan's back, a faint, cold smile on her face. The Yun and Lin families were both reputable families in the Li kingdom, so they were naturally at the front of the line. Before long, they had all arrived at the entrance to the Imperial Territory. After showing their tokens to the guards, they entered the secret realm one after another. He had imagined the entrance to the mystic realm to be a majestic and unadorned gate, but in reality the entrance to the mystic realm was actually a cave that looked very deep. The walls of the cave were emitting a faint light, which was very mysterious. Yun Ruoyao led Yun Ruoyu and Yiqianying into the cave first, followed closely by Yun Ruoyan, Lin Qingxue, and Lin Qingchen. Behind them were 2 unfamiliar youths, 1 male and 1 female. The cave was very deep and a cold wind blew through it. Yun Ruoyan, and Yiqianying held hands, both nervous and expectant. Brother, that's so magical. It even glows. A girl's voice came from behind. Brother, I don't know either, a youth replied. Sister, be careful, follow me. Tisk, if you don't even know what moonstone is, I wonder what country bumpkin you're from. Yun Ruoyu's giggling voice came from the front. Brother, someone's calling us bumpkins, the girl whispered. Sister, don't pay attention to those snobs. Once we enter Kongming Academy, no one will dare look down on us anymore. Yun Ruoyu was just about to retort when Yun Ruoyao stopped her. This sister of hers didn't know when to throw a tantrum, and it gave her a headache. Sister Ruoyan, Lin Qingxue whispered, I don't think that the inlaid walls are moonstones. No, they're not, Yun Ruoyan replied. It's a type of mineral that contains fluorescent powder. This mineral is sentient, and it only glows when there's someone around. In her past life, when Pei Zio had brought her into this cave, she had also thought that the glowing objects on the walls were moonstones. It was only after hearing from Pei Zio that she realized that they weren't. We're at the exit. Someone called out and the crowd turned to look in front of them. White light shone from the sky. Not long after, the crowd finally exited the cave and their eyes widened. In front of them was a valley, filled with birdsong, fragrant flowers and gurgling water. There were many plants that none of them had seen before, all of them thriving. These flowers are so pretty. Lin Qingxue pointed at a pink flower and exclaimed excitedly. That flower's poisonous, so don't touch it, Yun Ruoyan warned. Yes, Sister Ruoyan. Lin Qingxue nodded obediently. Yun Ruoyan had already told them in advance what to take note of once they entered the imperial territory. Lin Qingxue had been so excited that she'd forgotten. The brighter something is, the more poisonous it is. Aren't you courting death if you don't even understand such a simple principle? Yun Ruoyu didn't let go of any opportunity to insult others. We're indeed not as smart as you, sister, Yun Ruoyan replied coolly. Why don't we split up so that we don't drag you down? As soon as Yun Ruoyan finished speaking, she led the two Lin sisters down another path. If Sister Ruoyan doesn't come with us, won't Uncle blame us if we encounter any danger? After all, she's the wife-born daughter of the Yun family and she's of noble status, Yi Qianying whispered. Turi, she's just a figurehead. Sister Qianying, do you really think so highly of her? Yun Ruoyu tugged on Yun Ruoyao's sleeve. In my heart, Sister Ruoyao is the real sister. Hearing Yun Ruoyu's words, Yun Ruoyao's expression was calm, but her heart was filled with joy. She's the one who wants to go alone. If anything happens to her, it won't be our fault. Yun Ruoyao led her sisters in the opposite direction. After shaking off the Yun sisters, Yun Ruoyan brought the Lin sisters to an empty spot and sat down. Chapter 24. Yun Ruoyan picked up a branch from the ground and drew a circle around it. This is the outskirts of the imperial territory. It's less dangerous, but there are fewer treasures. Given our strength, I think we should be able to go deeper. She drew a straight line through the circle and looked at the Lin sisters inquiringly. Obtaining the right to enter the imperial territory was not only to enter Kongming Academy, but also to obtain valuable herbs and treasures. The imperial territory was the place with the most spiritual energy in the entire Xuanhuan continent, and it was home to a large number of valuable herbs and magical beasts. Herbs were ingredients for making pills, and the cores of magical beasts were even more valuable. Not only could they be used as pills, but high-grade cores could also greatly increase one's cultivation. We'll listen to you, sister, Lin Qingxin said. Right, we'll listen to you, sister. Lin Qingxue also raised her hand in agreement. Before we came, we promised grandfather that we'd bring him as many high-quality herbs as possible. Once the three sisters had reached an agreement, they prepared to set off. Suddenly, Qiuqiu's voice rang out in Yun Ruoyan's mind. Mistress, there's a mid-rank magical beast behind you, and it's trying to ambush you. The biggest difference between magical beasts and normal beasts was that they were intelligent and knew how to react to their target's movements. A mid-rank magical beast? Can I take care of it? Yun Ruoyan hadn't expected to encounter a mid-rank magical beast before they'd even left the outskirts. She wasn't confident that she'd be able to deal with one, so she asked in her mind. If you use the Feilai blade, it'll be easy to take care of. Given your current cultivation, you'll probably have to fight it for a few rounds, Qiuqiu replied. She wouldn't use the Feilai blade unless she had no other choice, and she wanted to make use of this opportunity to hone her cultivation. Perhaps she'd be able to make a breakthrough. All right, let's fight. Yun Ruoyan purposefully landed behind her sisters, one hand on the hilt of her sword, silently preparing for battle. It's coming, Qiuqiu warned. At the same time, Yun Ruoyan called out, careful. She unsheathed her sword and held it horizontally in front of her and her sisters. As soon as he finished this series of actions, a black, leopard-like animal scurried out of the woods at the side. Unprepared, Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingchen were both taken aback. For a moment they didn't know how to react. Holding the sword in one hand, Yun Ruoyan pushed the two sisters back with the other. With a twist of her waist, Yun Ruoyan narrowly dodged the beast's attack. It landed on the ground and crawled on the ground, staring intently at her with its yellow eyes. It's a night demon leopard. Qiuqiu explained. The night demon leopard is a mid-level magical beast. It's cunning, but its attacks aren't that strong. It usually hunts its prey at night. Now that Yun Ruoyan was confident, she was even calmer against the night demon leopard. In her heart, she thought about how she could kill it in a single blow. The night demon leopard's attack power is not strong, but it is very smart and its movements are extremely fast. This was Xuanhuan's first time facing a magical beast, and Xiaoqiu was nervous for its mistress. It failed in its sneak attack and is now observing Master, considering whether to escape or fight. Master can bluff and scare it away. Scared off? No. This was her first time encountering a magical beast, and her desire to fight had been ignited. She didn't want to lose this opportunity to train herself. Her heart skipped a beat, and she tilted the sword in her hand down a little, revealing a flaw. The night demon leopard's yellow eyes suddenly shone with a bloodthirsty light. With a forceful kick of its hind legs, it pounced at Xuanhuan. The night demon leopard locked onto the opening that Xuanhuan had revealed and pounced at her as fast as lightning. Xuanhuan had been waiting for this move. Bending her legs and bending her back, she raised the sword in her hand. Just like that, the night demon leopard's belly faced Xuanhuan's sword. The night demon leopard landed behind Xuanhuan, its eyes filled with shock. In the next second, its stomach was like a bag that had been cut open, and its intestines fell out, covering the ground in red. Then its body tilted and it fell to the ground. "Wow, Master, you're amazing!" Xiaoqiu cheered. "Wow, sister, you're amazing!" Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingchen also ran over, cheering. Xuanhuan stood up and sheathed her sword. She exhaled, a carefree smile on her face. This was the first time she had killed a demon leopard since her rebirth, and it gave her a sense of satisfaction. She wasn't a bloodthirsty person, but she had suppressed her anger from her past life for far too long, and she needed an outlet to vent it. "Take out its beast core," Xuanhuan instructed. "All right." Lin Qingxue unsheathed the twin daggers she carried with her, walked up to the night demon leopard's corpse, and plunged the daggers into its eyes, splitting open its skull. "Oh my god, it's a 4th-rank beast core!" Lin Qingxue exclaimed in surprise as she took out a green beast core from the leopard's skull. Lin Qingchen also walked over happily to take the core. "I've used up most of the beast cores at home, and a 4th-rank beast core is a good ingredient for making pills." Lin Qingchen wiped the blood off the core and was about to place it in her pouch when she suddenly remembered that Xuanhuan had killed the beast, and that the beast core should be given to her. She hurriedly handed the core back to Xuanhuan and said apologetically, "This is sister's spoils of war, so it should be given to you. We sisters don't have to worry about such things." Xuanhuan smiled. "And this is only the outskirts. There'll be plenty of good stuff in the future." Lin Qingchen didn't refuse and placed the beast core in her pouch. Just as they were about to continue walking deeper into the forest, Xuanhuan suddenly sensed that someone was following her. She stopped and spoke to Xiaoqiu in her mind. "Xiaoqiu, it seems like someone's following us. Do you feel it?" Xiaoqiu called out cheerfully. "It's just 2 commoners, no threat at all. I didn't expect you to discover us so quickly." It turned out that Xiaoqiu hadn't warned Xuanhuan on purpose to test her sensitivity. "Even if they're commoners, we can't let them follow us secretly. If they're hiding, they'll be a threat." Xuanhuan's past life's experience had left a deep impression on her. "Come out. No matter who you are, if you're hiding, you're an enemy." Xuanhuan stopped and shouted in the direction of the human aura. Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingchen also stopped. "What's the matter?" Lin Qingxue asked. "Someone's following us and sister noticed," Lin Qingchen explained in a small voice. The 2 of them followed Xuanhuan's gaze. There was a rustling in the grass and then a boy and a girl appeared. "It's you." Lin Qingxue immediately recognized the 2 of them as the siblings who had been following them in the cave. "Why are you following us?" Lin Qingchen asked, her tone unfriendly. "No one would be happy to be followed by someone else." "We didn't mean to follow you," the younger girl explained. The boy's gaze lingered on Xuanhuan, causing her to frown. However, his gaze was probing and he didn't seem to have any ill intentions, so she couldn't reprimand him. "If you didn't mean to, then why?" Lin Qingxue asked, amused. The girl's face reddened and she tugged at the boy beside her, motioning for him to speak. The boy finally shifted his gaze away from Xuanhuan and looked at Lin Qingxue. "We're following the scent of magical beasts." "You can smell magical beasts?" Lin Qingxue stared at the boy in surprise. The 2 sisters who had appeared out of nowhere were dressed in plain linen clothing, and it was obvious that they weren't from a prominent family. Xuanhuan and the Lin sisters were all dressed in neat clothing, and the scions of the larger families would even wear armor to protect themselves. None of them looked as shabby as the 2 sisters in front of them. The boy had a bow on him and the girl had no weapon at all. Faced with the trio's questioning gazes, the girl quickly hid behind the boy, but the boy didn't seem to be affected. "We're beastkin," the boy began. "My name is Zhuo Yifeng and this is my sister Zhuo Lin. Beastkin? You're the beastkin that's rumored to be on the verge of extinction." Lin Qingshua's shock was apparent on her face. Yun Ruoyan and Lin Qingchen were equally surprised. "Yes, we're the few remaining beastkin in the world," Zhuo Yifeng replied. "We beastkin have an innate talent for hunting magical beasts, and my sister is extremely sensitive to their scent. She was the one who found us." Yun Ruoyan looked at Zhuo Liner, who was hiding behind Zhuo Yifeng. The girl was only about 10 years old and she was very small and skinny. She didn't know how they'd managed to qualify for the imperial territory. "My cultivation isn't bad and I'm a good hunter, but I need someone to look after my sister when I'm in battle." Zhuo Yifeng looked a little older, about 14 or 15 years old. His eyes were bright, and they shone with determination. "We'd like to form a team with you and we hope you'll agree." To be honest, the two siblings weren't particularly annoying, but the more people there were, the bigger the target would be and their movements would be hindered. Zhuo Yifeng seemed to have guessed their concerns. "I can carry my sister on my back when we're traveling so she won't be a burden to you. I'm already a 5th rank blade master, so I'll definitely be able to take care of her." Having a 5th rank blade master as a combat partner was indeed quite tempting, but Yun Ruoyan still had her reservations. Just as Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingchen were about to agree, Yun Ruoyan immediately refused. "No. We don't know each other well, and if we don't have absolute trust in each other, it'll be very dangerous. Let's go our separate ways." Yun Ruoyan pointed at a fork in the road in front of her. "We'll take the left and you take the right. We'll meet again." She led the way into the fork with Lin Qingchen following closely behind. Lin Qingxue hesitated for a moment before following. After a few steps, Lin Qingxue subconsciously looked back, and her gaze just happened to meet Zhuo Yifeng's. Her heart skipped a beat. That boy's eyes were so bright. Chapter 25. The Beastkin siblings were just an interlude, and Yun Ruoyan quickly forgot about them. She led Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingchen deeper into the imperial territory. "Sister Ruoyan, look. There's so much core foundation grass. You can make a lot of core foundation pills." Lin Qingxue pointed excitedly at the grass as they turned a corner and saw a large patch of emerald green plants growing about 10 meters in front of them. Core foundation grass was the most important ingredient in making core foundation pills. Although core foundation pills weren't as effective as core foundation pills, because they were relatively easy to make, they were the most useful and common. For example, for this trial, almost all of the scions of the major families would carry their own herbs with them, and core foundation pills were a necessity. Because of this trial, core foundation pills were in high demand throughout the Li Kingdom. "Pick some more, grandfather will be very happy to see them." "Yes, thank goodness I have a storage pouch, or I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to store so much." Lin Qingchen patted her pouch. The pouch that Lin Zainan had given her could store more than 10 times what it looked like, but it still couldn't compare to Yun Ruoyan's bracelet. Mistress, mistress." Qiuqiu's voice rang out in Yun Ruoyan's mind. "What's the matter?" "You can also store some core foundation grass in your storage pouch. Perhaps it'll be useful in the future." Yun Ruoyan had only been paying attention to her surroundings, and hadn't really thought about this. When she was young, she had been tested to have a talent for pill making, but because she had been poisoned, she had gradually lost that talent. Now that she was attempting to cure the poison with her grandfather's help, perhaps her talent could be restored, and she could become a pill master like her grandfather. She already had a high-grade furnace in her bracelet, and if she prepared a few more herbs, she could attempt to make pills herself. "Alright, let's make use of this trial to prepare some good herbs." While Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingchen weren't paying attention, Yun Ruoyan picked some core foundation grass and placed it in her bracelet. "Shoo." Lin Qingxue suddenly made a shushing gesture. "There's a white rabbit over there." Yun Ruoyan and Lin Qingchen looked in the direction of her finger. At the edge of the field, a large white rabbit had appeared, its head lowered as it ate the grass. "It's a demon rabbit," Lin Qingchen whispered. "A demon rabbit that grew up eating core foundation grass. Ah, the taste must be very good. It's also very nutritious. It's mine." Lin Qingxue unsheathed her twin blades once more and inched closer to the rabbit. The demon rabbit's long ears suddenly twitched, apparently sensing the movement. It raised its head to reveal a pair of red eyes, then turned around and ran into the forest at the side. "Hey, don't run!" Lin Qingxue shouted as she chased into the forest. "Qingxue!" Yun Ruoyan and Lin Qingchen called out to her, but she disappeared into the forest in the blink of an eye. Yun Ruoyan and Lin Qingqian hurried into the forest. "Demon Rabbit, if you keep running, I won't be so polite anymore." Lin Qingshua's voice came from the front again, and the two hurriedly chased after her. "Qingxue, don't chase after it." Lin Qingqian ran as she chased after Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan dashed through the forest, and after a while she finally caught up to Lin Qingqian. However, the scene in front of her left her dumbfounded. Lin Qingxue was hugging the demon rabbit in her arms, and not far from her were nearly 20 brown beasts the size of hunting dogs. "They're fiery-maned hounds?" Qiuqiu shouted in Yun Ruoyan's mind. Fiery-maned hounds are pack animals. Although they're low-rank beasts, a pack of them shouldn't be underestimated. Lin Qingqian had also rushed over, and she was also stunned by the scene. All three of them held their breaths. Lin Qingxue slowly turned around to look at her two sisters, her expression as if she wanted to cry. "Qingxue, let the demon rabbit go," Yun Ruoyan ordered. If the rabbit could divert the hound's attention for a moment, they'd have a chance to escape. Fighting 20 fiery-maned hounds with just the three of them would be courting death, so it was best to run. Lin Qingxue nodded obediently and let go of the rabbit. Freed from its restraints, the demon rabbit immediately jumped out of Lin Qingxue's arms and tried to escape. However, the hounds were even faster than it. One of the hounds leaped out of the pack and caught the rabbit in its mouth in the blink of an eye. As for the rest of the hounds, they continued to stare at the three of them. They slowly spread out, forming a circle around the three of them. Yun Ruoyan, Lin Qingqian, and Lin Qingxue stood back to back, each taking out their own weapons. Yun Ruoyan's weapon was a common family sword, Lin Qingxue's twin daggers, and Lin Qingqian's whip was unsheathed from her waist. Both Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingqian were 5th-rank blade masters, and logically speaking they should be much stronger than Yun Ruoyan, who was only 3rd rank. However, the strength that Yun Ruoyan had displayed far exceeded her cultivation. Moreover, she had been known as a cultivation genius since she was a child. Even though her cultivation had deteriorated, she still held a special place in her sisters' hearts. As a result, both Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingqian followed her lead. Yun Ruoyan stared unblinkingly at the pack of hounds. Suddenly, one of the larger hound's eyes lit up and Yun Ruoyan caught it. That hound wasn't attacking anyone else but Yun Ruoyan. In that instant, Yun Ruoyan's desire to fight was ignited. Magical beasts were intelligent, and could even determine the cultivation of their foes. This hound must have noticed that Yun Ruoyan's cultivation was the lowest among the three of them, so it decided to target her. Unfortunately, the hound's cleverness had backfired, and its opponent was undoubtedly the strongest of the three. Yun Ruoyan was afraid that the hound would accidentally injure her sisters, so she didn't try to dodge. Instead, she raised her sword and met the hound head-on. Yun Ruoyan's sword clashed with the hound's claws. Yun Ruoyan didn't use the bracelet's pocket dimension, but her own strength to fight the hound head-on. Using her sword to lock the hound's claws in place, she raised her leg and kicked the hound's stomach. The hound was sent flying by the kick, crouching on the ground and moaning softly. Hearing the low moans, the hounds quickly split into 3 groups, separating the 3 of them. This way, each of them would have to deal with 6 or 7 hounds. Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingqian also brandished their blades and whips, clashing with the hounds. Hounds were constantly sent flying, but others would quickly return. With their strength, it wouldn't be a problem for each of them to deal with 3 hounds, but 6 would be a one-on-one battle. Their stamina would be at a disadvantage. Moreover, the sky was getting darker and it would be even more dangerous at night. Looks like I'll have to use the bracelet's pocket dimension. After sending a hound flying, Yun Ruoyan twisted the bracelet on her wrist. Under Qiuqiu's guidance, Yun Ruoyan was now able to use the bracelet's pocket dimension as she pleased. As the bracelet spun, a powerful force began to circulate throughout Yun Ruoyan's body. When the larger hound pounced on her again, Yun Ruoyan leapt up and stabbed her sword into its head. Ah! At this moment, Lin Qingxue suddenly screamed. Yun Ruoyan flung the hound's corpse aside and turned around to see Lin Qingxue being surrounded by 5 hounds, while another was flying in the air, aiming for Lin Qingxue's waist. Yun Ruoyan wanted to save her, but they'd been too far apart during the fight, and she couldn't put out a nearby fire. Lin Qingqian, who was closer to her, was also caught in the middle of a pincer attack. Just as Lin Qingxue was about to be bitten by the hound's sharp teeth, an arrow suddenly flew towards her. The arrow pierced through the air and into the hound's neck, causing it to fall to the ground just inches away from Lin Qingxue. Immediately after, a figure dashed out from the forest to the side. Yun Ruoyan saw that it was none other than Zhui Feng, whom she'd parted ways with not long ago. Feng held a bow and arrow in his hands, and his movements were swift. Every arrow hit a hound's vitals and every one of them died. Very quickly, 4 hounds had died by his hand. Lin Qingxue and Lin Qingchen were both exhausted from the fight, and they huddled together, barely managing to fend off the hound's attacks. Xuanhuan mustered all the strength in her body, and her sword danced through the air. The hounds surrounding her quickly fell to her sword. Xuanhuan and Feng huddled together, one sword and one bow. Finally, just as night was about to fall, they'd killed all the hounds. Qingxue, Qingchen, are you all right? Xuanhuan sheathed her sword and looked at her sisters with concern. We're fine, Lin Qingchen replied. But Lin Qingxue walked over to Feng's side. You're injured. Feng looked at the scratch on his arm and replied carelessly, it's nothing, just a small wound. How could it be a small wound? You've lost so much blood. Lin Qingxue hurriedly took out a bottle and poured the medicinal powder on Feng's arm, then used a handkerchief to bandage his wound. Xuanhuan didn't stop Lin Qingxue from treating Feng's wound. Why are you still following us? Where's your sister? We weren't following you. Lin's petite figure stood up from a nearby bush and walked over to Feng's back. What a coincidence. Xuanhuan couldn't believe it. They'd clearly been going in 2 different directions, so how could they have run into each other? Sister Ruoyan. Lin Qingxue looked at Xuanhuan pleadingly. Xuanhuan's tone softened. But I still have to thank you for your help. Otherwise, my sister would have suffered. As she spoke, Xuanhuan took out a bag of foundational qi powder and handed it to her. Here's some foundational qi powder. We're going to be in the territory for 10 days, so you'll definitely need it. The 2 siblings looked a little too shabby. While a foundational qi powder might not be much to the scions of the larger families, it was definitely precious to them. Chapter 26. Feng looked at the pouch, then at Xuanhuan, his face still expressionless, his eyes bright. No need to thank me, he replied. Even if you hadn't been the ones being attacked today, I would have helped you. Feng's eyes seemed to give Xuanhuan the impression that he wasn't human, but rather a magical beast. Did your face get injured just now? Feng suddenly asked. Xuanhuan subconsciously touched her face. Indeed, there were traces of blood. Ever since her birthmark had been scratched, it hadn't fully healed, and pus and blood would occasionally seep out. Lin Zainan had said that the pus and blood that seeped out were actually poison, and that it was a good thing that it had seeped out. As a result, he hadn't given her any medicine, hoping that the wound would heal naturally. However, the wound looked too frightening, so Xuanhuan left a tuft of hair to cover it. The battle had been too intense, and the wound that had just healed a little had torn open again, causing her hair to stick to the pus and blood. It's just a small wound, don't worry. Xuanhuan took the handkerchief Lin Qingchen handed her and wiped the pus and blood off her face. Did the 2 of you come here because of the scent of wild beasts? Xuanhuan didn't hide her wariness and repulsion toward the Zhua siblings. Lin Qingxue walked over and tugged on Xuanhuan's sleeve, but Xuanhuan didn't budge. Xuanhuan would naturally remember the kindness of strangers, but she couldn't let down her guard in the slightest. Feng looked at Xuanhuan, but didn't explain anything. He bent down and carried his sister on his back. Until we meet again, he said before turning to leave. Brother Zhua, Lin Qingxue called out from behind him. It's getting dark, so why don't we rest together tonight? We can look after each other, and tomorrow morning, we'll part ways, all right? He looked at Xuanhuan as he said this. Feng stopped, but he didn't turn around, clearly waiting for Xuanhuan to speak. Xuanhuan finally sighed. It's indeed safer to have more people in the forest at night. And these hounds have to be cleaned up. Many of them were killed by you, so we can't take your spoils of war. Although the maned hound was only a low-level magical beast, its inner core was still worth some money. The few of them began to dig out the inner core. Just as she was busy, Qiuqiu's voice rang out in her mind once more. Master, there's a group of people coming this way. A group of people? Xuanhuan stopped what she was doing. Which family are they from? In her past life, Xuanhuan had heard of some of the secrets of the imperial territory. In order to reduce the number of competitors or to obtain more treasures, some clans would resort to underhanded means to the disciples of other clans who entered the mystic realm with them. Sometimes, not only did they steal the treasures, they would even kill people to cover up their crimes. Are they strong? Xuanhuan asked. Based on their auras, there are 2 4th-rank and 2 5th-rank blade masters. The other side had 4 people, and their side also had 4 people, so they were not afraid. However, Zhuifeng was an unknown factor. Yun Ruoyan's gaze landed on Zhuifeng. As if sensing her gaze, Zhuifeng turned back to look at her. Just as their eyes met, an abrupt female voice rang out. "Oh my, why's it so crowded here?" The crowd turned to see that the speaker was none other than Yun Ruoyan's sister, the fifth miss of the Yun family, Yun Ruoyu. Naturally, she was accompanied by Yun Ruoyao and Yi Qianying. As for the other youth, it was the young master of the Pei family, Pei Zio. When Pei Zio saw Yun Ruoyan, he hurriedly walked over, a smile on his face. "Ruoyan, I thought it would take some effort to find you, but I didn't expect to bump into you here." Yun Ruoyan frowned. Did this guy have amnesia? Hadn't she already told him that day at the Pei Manor? Why was he still so persistent? "Why are you here?" Lin Qingxue stepped forward. "We were clearly heading in opposite directions, so how did we bump into each other?" Yun Ruoyu also stepped forward. "I was just about to ask you the same thing. We were clearly heading in separate directions, so how did we end up here?" "What do you mean?" Lin Qingxue asked curiously. "Are you saying that we followed you?" "What a joke." "Of course we did." Yun Ruoyu glared at them. "We walked along the same path, and it must have been because your path wasn't easy to walk, so you turned around and took our path instead." The two of them began to argue back and forth, unwilling to back down. Yun Ruoyan frowned. Although Yun Ruoyu was arrogant and domineering, her personality was rather honest, and she wouldn't lie so boldly. "I really wasn't following you just now, but I don't know why we bumped into each other," Zhuifeng whispered to Yun Ruoyan's side. Yun Ruoyan's frown deepened. Could it be that we'd walked into a maze realm? There was a maze realm within the imperial territory, but it wasn't common. Only those with bad luck would enter it. "We might have walked into a maze realm," Pei Zio said. In her past life, it was Pei Zio who had told Yun Ruoyan about the maze realm, so Yun Ruoyan wasn't at all surprised by his words. After entering the maze realm, all paths, no matter which direction they lead, will converge at the same place, just as if you're walking in circles, Pei Zio continued to explain. Then what do we do?" Yi Qianying walked up to Pei Zio's side and tugged on his sleeve, looking like a frightened little girl. "Brother Zio, will we die here?" Yi Qianying was petite and adorable, and when she spoke in such a coy voice, he couldn't help but feel pity for her. "No, there's always an exit to the imperial territory. As long as we find the exit, we'll be able to leave." "Then what if we can't find the exit?" Zhuifeng asked, his eyes even brighter in the darkness. Pei Zio hesitated for a moment before replying, "Even if we can't find the exit after the trial ends 10 days later, someone will naturally come to save us. As long as we survive within 10 days, we'll be fine." "In that case, we won't be able to get into Kongming Academy." Yun Ruoyao, who had been silent all this time, sounded indignant. If she couldn't get into Kongming Academy despite her family's recommendation, it would be extremely embarrassing for her. After all, she was the most talented daughter of the Yun family. It didn't matter if others couldn't get into Kongming Academy, but she had to. When they found out that they were trapped in the imperial territory, everyone's expressions darkened and their brows furrowed. "It's too late now. Tomorrow we'll start looking for the exit. With so many of us, we'll definitely find it." Pei Zio was unusually optimistic. The group lit a campfire and rested on the spot. The meat of the hull-maned hound naturally became their dinner. The two groups each prepared 2 hounds and placed them over the fire to roast. Yun Ruoyan, the Lin sisters, and Zhuifeng siblings began to divide the cores. The earthy red cores piled up one by one, and there were 24 of them in total. "That hound looks so cold, but its cores are so cute." Lin Qingxue smiled happily as she looked at the cores on the ground. The others were all amused by her innocent expression. If they were to remain trapped in the mystic realm, they would lose the opportunity to enter Kongming Academy. As such, obtaining treasures for the family was of utmost importance. Yun Ruoyan's group happily divided up the treasures, while Yun Ruoyao's group could only sit by the side and watch. That wasn't a good feeling at all. Originally, they had also encountered a group of low-rank beasts, but their numbers were simply too great. Of the 3 of them, only Yun Ruoyao's cultivation was slightly higher, and she was able to escape unscathed from the attacks of the beasts. Yun Ruoyu was having a hard time, and Yi Qianying was even worse off. When she was fighting with the magical beasts, she had been so scared that her voice had gone hoarse, and it was still hoarse. Fortunately, her voice was loud enough to attract Pei Zio over, and Yun Ruoyao and Pei Zio were finally able to repel the beasts. However, because of the 2 burdens, they weren't able to kill the beasts and obtain their cores. As a result, the 4 of them ended up empty-handed. "There's 24 cores here." Yun Ruoyan pointed them out one by one, then placed 10 in front of Zhui Yifeng. These are yours and the rest are for the three of us. This time, Zhui Yifeng did not decline and kept the inner core. Look at how close eldest sister is to the Lin sisters. I don't think she's a member of the Yun family anymore. Yun Ruoyu began to speak sarcastically once more. Yun Ruoyao didn't respond, but a cold smile hung on her lips. Once they were out of the mystic realm, she would definitely tell her father that Yun Ruoyan wasn't willing to travel with them. Madame Min had told her that although her father's opinion of Yun Ruoyan had changed somewhat, he was still worried that Yun Ruoyao would hold a grudge against him. As a wife-born daughter, being ignored by her own family and disliked by her own father, she was bound to be filled with resentment. It was just that Yun Ruoyan was very good at pretending. When she didn't have the ability, she would pretend that she wasn't competitive and that anyone could bully her in order to numb them. Now that she had recovered some of her cultivation, she would immediately disregard them. If her father were to find out that his wife-born daughter didn't care about the Yun family at all, she didn't believe that Yun Ruoyan would still have a place in the Yun family. Yi Qianying looked at Yun Ruoyao's cold smile and could guess what she was thinking. However, she didn't expose her. Instead, she comforted Yun Ruoyu. Those are Sister Ruoyan's sisters, so it's only natural that they get to know each other. Sister, don't worry too much. By Yun Ruoyan's side, the entire hound had been roasted over the fire until it glistened with oil, and the aroma of the burnt meat grew stronger and stronger. Zhui Yifeng had gathered some herbs from somewhere and applied them to the roasted meat. Immediately, a faint, spicy aroma began to spread. Ah, it smells so good. Everyone present exclaimed in unison. On the other hand, the people sitting on the other side didn't have such an easy time. The three young mistresses and a young master were usually the kind of people who were used to having their clothes handed to them. Now they really couldn't do it themselves, and it would be a miracle if they managed to roast the meat properly. Yun Ruoyu looked at the roasted meat in her hands, frustrated. She threw it into the fire and complained, "What kind of rotten meat is this?" Her eyes were full of resentment. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.